bitter wind howled through bare branches as Megan Taylor trudged through knee-deep snow, one hand clutching her swollen belly, each labored breath clouded before her face disappearing into the darkening Appalachian twilight. 8 months pregnant and alone, abandoned by everyone who had once claimed to love her. Another contraction gripped her body stronger than the last. She checked her phone again, no signal, battery at 12%. The women's shelter in Northbrook was still miles away. The snow fell heavier now, the forecasted light flurries having transformed into a blinding white fury. The bus driver had apologized when depositing her at the rural crossroads, explaining county regulations prohibited traveling further on these mountain roads once the snow reached a certain depth. 20 miles short of her destination, with night falling and the temperature plummeting, Megan now recognized the mortal danger facing both her and her unborn child. A particularly vicious contraction doubled her over. Too soon. The baby wasn't due for another 2 weeks. The stress, the cold, the exertion, her body was betraying her. Through tear-blurred eyes, she spotted a faint golden light between the trees. Hope surged through her frozen limbs. Someone was out here in this desolate stretch of wilderness. With renewed determination, she changed course, each step a battle against exhaustion and pain. 8 months ago, life had been different. Megan had been a fourth-year nursing student with a steady boyfriend and supportive parents, or so she'd thought. Then came the pregnancy test and everything unraveled with breathtaking speed. Jason Miller's face had transformed from loving to cold in an instant. "I can't be a father," he'd said, packing his things. His handsome features hardened as he delivered the final blow. "This isn't what I signed up for." His medical career couldn't accommodate a child. Their 2-year relationship meant nothing compared to his carefully planned future. Her parents' reaction had been even worse. Her father's disappointment had cut deeper than his words. Andrew Taylor, respected pastor of Oak Ridge's largest Baptist congregation, had looked at his only daughter as though she were a stranger. "Not under our roof. You've made your choice." Her mother, Patricia, stood silently behind him, eyes downcast, offering neither support nor objection. Within a week, Megan had been homeless, her education on hold, her future uncertain. The memory of that final confrontation burned as painfully as the frigid air in her lungs. Her father's voice, normally so measured from the pulpit, had risen to a shout when she refused to name the father. The congregation, our reputation. What will people think, as if their standing in the community outweighed their daughter's welfare? The hypocrisy of his supposed Christian compassion still stung even as she fought through this snow that threatened to become her shroud. The golden light grew closer. Through the curtain of white, Megan made out the silhouette of a cabin smoke curling from its chimney. Another contraction hit, this one stealing her breath entirely. She stumbled, catching herself against a tree. Her backpack, containing everything she owned, now felt impossibly heavy. Inside that frayed pack lay her entire life, a change of clothes, a small blanket for the baby, and tucked in a hidden pocket, the only sonogram photo of her child. She'd managed to find odd jobs after being expelled from her parents' home. Receptionist work at a small dental practice, until the owner decided her condition projected the wrong image to clients. Waiting tables at a highway diner until standing became too difficult. Sleeping on friends' couches until one by one they too had reached their limits of charity. Her final refuge, a shelter for young women in Northbrook, now seemed as unreachable as the moon. Just a little further. The words became her mantra as she pushed toward the cabin. The golden light flickered between the trees, an impossible beacon of hope. Another contraction seized her stronger than before. Megan gasped, falling to her knees in the snow. No, not here, not like this. With monumental effort, she forced herself upright, staggering toward the light like a moth to flame. Her baby deserved better than to enter the world in a snowdrift. Inside the cabin, Catherine Hayes set her weather-beaten journal aside. For decades, she'd recorded her thoughts in its pages, each entry a testament to her solitude. Lately, her entries had been troubled by strange dreams, a young woman, a child, and some indefinable sense of purpose that eluded her waking mind. Tonight, though, something felt different. The air seemed charged with expectation. Catherine had been a nurse once, a lifetime ago, before grief and circumstance had driven her to this remote existence. 7 years of self-imposed isolation had turned her hands arthritic and her heart guarded. The townspeople left her alone, dropping supplies at the end of her long driveway once a month. It was an arrangement that suited her. Tonight, though, she'd built the fire higher than usual, made extra tea, set out 2 cups instead of one. When questioned by her rational mind, Catherine had no explanation for these preparations. The cabin was sturdy, built by her grandfather's hands in the 1940s. The main room held a stone fireplace, 2 worn armchairs, and bookshelves lined with medical texts and classics. A small kitchen occupied one corner, its appliances outdated but functional. The bedroom and bathroom were tucked behind a half wall, affording minimal privacy. It wasn't much, but it had sheltered her through 7 winters of grief. 7 years since Lieutenant Robert Hayes had been killed by an IED in Afghanistan. 7 years since Catherine, then 3 months pregnant, had received the news from a stone-faced officer at her door. 7 years since the stress and shock had sent her into premature labor, delivering a perfectly formed daughter who never drew breath. 7 years since she'd named that silent child Abigail, after Robert's grandmother, and buried her in a cemetery she hadn't visited since. The medical community had respected her decision to withdraw from practice. Her colleagues understood trauma, even as they gently suggested therapy-time reconnection. But Catherine had chosen a different path: complete isolation. She'd retreated to her grandparents' cabin, her only regular human contact being Henry Weber, a 70-year-old retired firefighter who brought supplies and respected her need for silence. Outside, the storm intensified. Catherine moved to the window, watching snow accumulate in the yard. The trees beyond bent under the wind's assault branches, heavy with white. The Weather Service had predicted a minor system, not this raging blizzard. She added another log to the fire, checking her generator's fuel levels. Power outages were common during winter storms. She returned to her journal, reading the strange entries she'd completed just minutes earlier. "Someone is coming," she'd written, the words flowing from her pen unbidden. "Someone who will change everything." Catherine frowned at her own handwriting. She'd never considered herself fanciful or superstitious, yet these past weeks had been filled with odd premonitions and dreams that felt more like memories of events that hadn't happened yet. The knock, when it came, was so faint that Catherine almost mistook it for a branch against the window. But something pulled her from her chair toward the door, some instinct she hadn't used in years. She hesitated, hand on the knob. 7 years since she'd welcomed anyone but Henry into her sanctuary. 7 years of carefully constructed solitude. The knock came again, weaker than before. Catherine swung the door open, letting in a swirl of snow and frigid air. The sight before her sent a jolt of recognition through her body. Not recognition of the face which she'd never seen before, but of the moment. A young woman, barely more than a girl, really clutching her pregnant belly while leaning heavily against the doorframe. "Please." Megan's voice was nearly lost in the howling wind, her face pale with exhaustion and pain. "I think my baby's coming." Catherine hesitated only for a heartbeat before opening the door wider. "Come in. You're safe now." The words felt both foreign and familiar on her tongue, as though she'd rehearsed this moment in dreams. As Megan crossed the threshold, the wind suddenly died, though the snow continued falling. As though the storm itself had only existed to drive her to this doorstep, to this moment, to this meeting that would change both their lives forever. Catherine helped Megan to the worn sofa near the fireplace, her nurse's instincts taking over despite years of disuse. The young woman's face was pale, her breathing labored. As Catherine bustled about gathering towels and blankets, her eyes kept returning to the mantelpiece where a faded photograph stood in a simple wooden frame. The photo showed a much younger Catherine in a crisp nurse's uniform, standing proudly beside a tall man in military dress. Their smiles captured a moment of perfect happiness, frozen in time before tragedy rewrote their story. "How far apart are your contractions?" Catherine set down a mug of hot tea beside Megan, who grimaced. "Maybe 15 minutes. It's hard to tell." She accepted the tea gratefully, her hands shaking. "I'm sorry to impose like this. I don't have anywhere else to go." Catherine's eyes softened. "Nobody finds my cabin by accident, especially not in a storm like this." She settled into her rocking chair, studying the young woman. "I'm Catherine Hayes, Megan Mitchell," she replied. Her eyes darting around the cabin, taking in the simple, orderly space. Her gaze lingered on the photograph. "Is that your husband?" A shadow crossed Catherine's face. "Was. Robert died in Afghanistan 7 years ago." Megan whispered an apology, which Catherine acknowledged with a nod, the familiar ache in her chest dulled by time. "What about the baby's father?" Megan's face hardened. "Jason decided fatherhood wasn't for him. 8 months pregnant was apparently the perfect time to tell me that. And your family, they made their position clear when they changed the locks." Megan's voice cracked. Religious family, unmarried daughter. You can imagine the rest. Catherine could indeed imagine it. Small towns had long memories and rigid expectations. She'd faced her own share of judgment after Robert died, and she'd withdrawn from the community. You were a nurse, Megan asked, nodding toward the photo. Catherine nodded, moving to an old trunk in the corner. She opened it and pulled out a medical kit meticulously maintained despite years of disuse. May I check you? See how things are progressing? Megan nodded, fear flickering across her face. I'm scared. This isn't how I imagined bringing my baby into the world. Few things in life happen as we imagine them. Catherine's voice was gentle as she washed her hands in a basin. But that doesn't mean they can't turn out all right. As Catherine examined her, Megan breathed through another contraction. You live out here all alone for 7 years now. Catherine's hands moved with practiced efficiency. After Robert died, I stayed in town for a while, but eventually, she trailed off, unwilling to delve into the full story with a stranger, even one in such vulnerable circumstances. You're about 5 centimeters dilated. First babies usually take their time, so we likely have hours ahead of us. Outside, the storm intensified, snow piling against the windows as wind rattled the cabin's frame. The two women strangers, thrust together by circumstance, fell into an uneasy silence, broken only by the crackling fire and Megan's occasional gasps of pain. There's something strange about all this. Catherine finally voiced the thought that had been nagging at her since opening the door. The dreams I've been having. You arriving tonight of all nights. Megan looked up sharply. Dreams? Catherine hesitated, then continued. For weeks now, I've dreamed of a young woman coming through a snowstorm. I've dreamed of a baby crying. She shook her head. I thought I was just getting senile. Megan's face paled further. I've had dreams, too, of an older woman in a cabin, of safety. Their eyes met across the room, a current of understanding passing between them. I don't believe in coincidences. Catherine's voice was quiet. Neither do I. Megan winced as another contraction began. Not anymore. Catherine moved to hold her hand through the pain. As their fingers interlaced, both women felt it, a strange energy, like static electricity, but warmer, more purposeful. Outside, the storm howled with renewed fury, as if responding to their connection. Whatever brought you here, Catherine said. When the contraction passed, I'm glad it did. Megan squeezed her hand, tears welling in her eyes. Me too. Neither woman spoke the thought that hung in the air between them, that forces beyond their understanding had orchestrated this meeting this night, this moment of shared destiny. The wind shrieked like a living thing, rattling the cabin's windows with increasing fury. Catherine moved about the small space with practiced efficiency, gathering supplies and arranging them on a small table beside the sofa where Megan now lay. From beneath her bed, Catherine retrieved her old medical bag, its leather case worn, but the contents meticulously maintained despite years of disuse. The phone lines are down. Catherine returned from checking the old rotary phone in the kitchen. Not that they're reliable on the best days out here. Megan breathed through another contraction, longer and more intense than the last. How far is the nearest hospital? 30 miles. In this storm, Catherine shook her head. We're on our own tonight. Fear flashed across Megan's face. Catherine sat beside her, taking her trembling hand. I delivered over 200 babies before I retired. This isn't ideal, but we'll manage. As if in response to her words, the lights flickered once, twice, then died completely. The cabin plunged into darkness, illuminated only by the orange glow of the fireplace. Perfect timing, Catherine muttered, striking a match to light the oil lamp on the side table. The warm light spread across the room, casting long shadows. Let me check the generator. But before she could move toward the door, a flash of blue-white light pulsed outside the windows, bright enough to momentarily blind both women. It was followed by an odd silence, the howling wind suddenly inexplicably quiet. What was that? Megan whispered, clutching her belly protectively. Catherine moved cautiously to the window, peering out into the darkness. I don't know. Lightning maybe, though I've never seen lightning in a snowstorm. Outside, strange lights danced among the trees. Not the harsh beam of flashlights or headlights, but something softer, almost ethereal. They pulsed and swayed as if moving to music only they could hear. Catherine Megan called, her voice tight with pain. Something's happening. The contractions are coming faster. Catherine hurried back to her side, professional concern overtaking her curiosity about the lights. She helped Megan shift to a more comfortable position, checking her dilation with practiced hands. You're progressing quickly, she said, surprise evident in her tone. Much faster than I would expect for a first baby. As she spoke, the cabin creaked and groaned around them, almost as if it were expanding and contracting with Megan's labor. A picture fell from the wall, the glass shattering on the wooden floor. This isn't natural, Catherine murmured more to herself than to Megan. She thought of the dreams that had been haunting her sleep, of the strange compulsion she'd felt to prepare for a visitor tonight of all nights. Megan cried out, her back arching with the force of another contraction. Tell me about yourself, Catherine instructed, hoping to distract her from the pain. Where did you grow up? Between labored breaths, Megan spoke of a small town not unlike the one nearby, of strict parents and rebellion, of dreams deferred and hopes abandoned. As she talked, Catherine was struck by the parallels to her own life. Different circumstances, perhaps, but similar wounds. I was pregnant once. Catherine found herself saying the words emerging unbidden. She hadn't spoken of this to anyone in decades. After Robert died, I didn't know when he deployed. Megan's eyes widened, her pain momentarily forgotten. What happened? I lost the baby. The stress, they said. Catherine's voice grew distant, remembering. A little girl. I was going to name her Abigail. Hope. Outside, the lights intensified, pulsing in rhythm with Megan's contractions. The wind picked up again, but differently now, almost musical, like voices singing just beyond the range of human hearing. I never thought I'd be here. Tears streamed down Megan's face. Alone, giving birth in a stranger's cabin during the storm of the century. Catherine squeezed her hand. You're not alone. And we're hardly strangers anymore, are we? As if in response, another contraction seized Megan stronger than any before. The cabin lights flickered on for a brief moment, though the power remained out. The medical kit beside them clicked open by itself, instruments arranging themselves in perfect order. Both women stared speechless. The rational part of Catherine's mind sought explanations. A power surge, the angle of the table, her own distracted movements. But her heart knew better. Something extraordinary was happening in this cabin tonight. Catherine Megan whispered, her eyes wide with wonder and fear. I think I need to push. Outside, the mysterious lights converged on the cabin, surrounding it in a gentle, pulsing glow. The storm raged beyond their protective circle, but within it, an unnatural calm prevailed. Within the cabin's walls, two women, one at the beginning of her journey into motherhood, one who had been denied that path, prepared to bring new life into the world under the most remarkable of circumstances. Not yet. Catherine's voice was firm as she checked Megan again. You're close, but not quite ready to push. Try to breathe through it. She glanced toward a small cabinet near the fireplace. I need more light. Can you hold on for a moment? Megan nodded, gripping the edges of the sofa as another contraction built. Catherine hurried to the cabinet, searching for more candles. Instead, her hands found something unexpected, a leather-bound Bible she hadn't opened in years. She had been about to set it aside when the book fell open, as if guided by unseen hands. The ancient Bible had belonged to Catherine's grandmother, its pages yellowed with age margins filled with generations of notes. Her eyes were drawn to a passage where the handwriting changed from her grandmother's neat script to something older. More faded, the child born during winter's fury shall bridge worlds and heal wounds long festered. When the lost mother finds the mother lost, the circle will be complete. A chill ran down Catherine's spine that had nothing to do with the drafty cabin. She carried the Bible back to Megan, along with the candles she'd been seeking. I found something strange. Catherine set the candles on the table and lit them one by one. An old family Bible with some kind of prophecy written in it. Megan's eyes widened as Catherine read the passage aloud. That's exactly like my dream. Her voice was strained, the one I've been having since I got pregnant. A voice kept saying something about a circle being completed. The storm outside reached an impossible intensity, snow swirling in patterns that defied natural weather systems. The light around the cabin pulsed brighter, seeping through the windows and casting the interior in an ethereal glow. There's more. Megan's voice was strange. In my dreams, there was always an older woman waiting for me in a cabin. I thought it was just my mind creating a fantasy of safety. She looked at Catherine with wonder. It was you, your face, this place. I've seen it all before. Catherine sat heavily in her rocking chair, the Bible open on her lap. I've dreamed of you too, a young woman heavy with child coming through the snow. She shook her head in disbelief. How is this possible? Before Megan could respond, a sharp knock sounded at the door. 3 precise raps that cut through the silence. Both women froze. Is someone else out in this storm? Megan asked. Catherine approached the door cautiously, peering through the small window beside it. The porch was empty, the snow undisturbed except for the swirling patterns created by the wind. No footprints led to or from the door. There's no one there. She returned to Megan's side. The knocking came again, more insistent this time. Catherine felt a presence not threatening but powerful filling the small cabin. It's starting. Megan's whisper held certainty beyond her years. Whatever's meant to happen here tonight, it's beginning. Catherine nodded slowly, accepting the inexplicable with a calmness that surprised her. She'd spent 7 years hiding from the world, from connection, from the pain of her losses. Now forced to engage with this young woman in the strange events surrounding her labor, Catherine felt more alive than she had in years. Tell me about your dreams. Catherine returned to Megan's side as another contraction began. Every detail you can remember. Between waves of pain, Megan described visions of light, of music without sound, of a child with remarkable eyes. And there was always a sense that something was waiting to be fulfilled, she finished. Something ancient and patient. Catherine nodded, recognition flaring within her. In my dreams, I was always preparing, making tea for 2, setting out baby blankets I don't own, keeping the fire burning higher than usual. She gestured around the cabin. Just like I did tonight, without understanding why. The Bible on Catherine's lap suddenly fluttered open again, pages turning as if caught in a breeze, though the air in the cabin was still. It settled on a different page where another handwritten note stood out. The 7th night of the 7th year, when snow covers all sin. 7 years, Catherine breathed. That's exactly how long I've lived here alone. Megan clutched her belly as the strongest contraction yet seized her. Catherine, she gasped. I think it really is time now. Outside, the mysterious lights converged on the cabin, their glow intensifying until it seemed the small structure stood in broad daylight, despite the darkness of the winter night. The ancient Bible on Catherine's lap began to emit a soft warmth, as if alive and breathing. As Catherine moved to help Megan, the realization struck her with stunning clarity. They were not alone in this cabin tonight. Something or someone was orchestrating events long set in motion, guiding them toward a conclusion written generations ago in the margins of a family Bible. Wait, Catherine rose from Megan's side. There's something I need to get. She moved toward the narrow staircase leading to the cabin's loft, her steps surprisingly nimble for her age. Keep breathing. I'll be right back. Megan nodded, focusing on the rhythm of her breathing as Catherine disappeared upstairs. The contractions were coming steadily now, her body preparing for the final stages of birth. Outside, the storm continued its supernatural dance, snow swirling in patterns too deliberate to be natural. Catherine returned moments later, carefully carrying a hand-carved wooden cradle. Dust covered its surface, but the craftsmanship was evident in every curve and detail. She set it down gently near the sofa and began wiping it clean with a soft cloth. Robert made this, she explained, her voice thick with emotion. When we found out I was pregnant, he finished it just days before he was deployed. Her fingers traced the intricate leaf patterns carved into the headboard. It's never been used. Megan's eyes filled with tears. It's beautiful. He was so excited about becoming a father. Catherine continued, lost in memory. He used to talk to my belly every night, telling the baby stories about all the things they would do together. She smiled sadly. When I lost the baby, I couldn't bear to get rid of the cradle. Couldn't bear to use it for anyone else's child either. And yet, you brought it down for mine. Megan's observation was soft. Catherine looked up, surprise crossing her features as she realized what she'd done. Yes, she said wonderingly, I did. She finished cleaning the cradle and lined it with fresh blankets from her linen closet. As Catherine worked, Megan studied her, seeing beyond the mask of efficiency to the deep wells of grief this woman had carried alone for decades. Why did you isolate yourself out here? Megan asked gently. Catherine's hands stilled. For a long moment, Megan thought she wouldn't answer. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. After I lost the baby, there was nothing left for me in town. Every corner held a memory of Robert. Every well-meaning neighbor, a reminder of what I'd lost. She resumed her preparation of the cradle. People tried to help, but their pity was unbearable. Eventually, they stopped trying. And you came here. Megan's voice held no judgment. This cabin belonged to my grandparents. I spent summers here as a girl. Catherine gestured around the small space. It was the only place I'd ever felt safe after Robert died. So I made it my sanctuary or my prison, depending on how you look at it. Megan reached out, taking Catherine's weathered hand in her own. Thank you for letting me in. A powerful contraction interrupted the moment. Megan gasped, her grip on Catherine's hand tightening. Something's different, she managed between breaths. Catherine checked her again, professional demeanor returning. The babies moved down. We're getting close. She helped Megan shift to a more comfortable position, offering encouragement as the younger woman worked through the pain. As the contraction eased, Megan looked up at Catherine with sudden intensity. There's something I haven't told you about why Jason really left. Catherine waited, sensing the importance of the confession. The night I told him about the baby, he was furious, said it would ruin his plans for medical school. Megan's voice trembled. He said terrible things, that I'd trapped him, that I'd done it deliberately. Then he hit me. She touched her cheek, remembering. No one had ever hit me before. I was so shocked I couldn't even cry. Catherine's face darkened with anger. Did you report him? Megan shook her head. I was ashamed and scared. He threatened to tell everyone I was unstable if I said anything. She met Catherine's eyes. My parents would have believed him over me. He was the golden boy headed for success. I was just their difficult daughter. You deserve better, Catherine said firmly, from all of them. The cabin creaked around them, the walls seeming to pulse with shared indignation. The mysterious lights outside intensified as if responding to Megan's revelation. Look, Catherine whispered, pointing to the windows. The snow had changed. Instead of chaotic swirls, it now formed a protective barrier around the cabin, a perfect circle of stillness amid the storm. Within that circle, the air glowed with soft, multicolored light. It's protecting us. Megan's certainty was absolute, whatever it is. Catherine nodded, beyond questioning the impossible events unfolding around them. As she watched, the hand-carved cradle began to rock gently on its own, though no draft or movement could explain it. I believe, Catherine said slowly, that we're exactly where we're meant to be. Both of us. She placed her hand on Megan's belly, feeling the child within respond with a strong kick. Megan's labor intensified as midnight approached. The cabin warmed beyond what the fireplace alone could provide, hummed with an energy neither woman could explain. Catherine moved with practiced efficiency, her years of midwifery training returning as if she'd never left the profession. You're doing beautifully, she encouraged, wiping Megan's brow with a cool cloth. Not much longer now. Megan nodded, exhaustion evident in her face. Tell me, she gasped between contractions, about your baby, the one you lost. Catherine stilled, surprised by the request. In 7 years, she'd spoken to no one about her daughter. Yet something in Megan's eyes, a genuine need to connect, to understand, broke through her reserve. She never drew breath, Catherine said softly, measuring Megan's pulse as she spoke. But she was perfect. Tiny fingers, tiny toes, a dusting of dark hair, like her father's. She swallowed hard. The doctors said her heart had stopped beating weeks before, that there was nothing anyone could have done. What did you name her? Megan asked. Abigail, Catherine replied, her voice barely audible. I named her Abigail. A powerful contraction seized Megan, then stronger than any before. She cried out, clutching Catherine's hand with surprising strength. As their fingers interlaced, Catherine was struck by a vision so vivid it momentarily disoriented her. A young woman with dark hair and Robert's smile standing in a sunlit meadow, beckoning. Abigail, Catherine whispered the name, a prayer on her lips. The vision faded as quickly as it had come. Catherine shook her head, trying to clear it, only to find Megan staring at her with wide-eyed eyes. I saw her too, Megan said, a young woman in a meadow. Before Catherine could respond, she felt a strange weight in her pocket, something that hadn't been there moments before. Reaching in, her fingers closed around a key, old and ornate, its brass surface warm to the touch. She drew it out, staring in confusion. She'd never seen this key before yet. It felt strangely familiar in her palm. What is that? Megan asked, momentarily distracted from her labor. I don't know, Catherine admitted, turning the key over in her hands. It wasn't here before. As she held the key, it began to emit a soft golden glow, pulsing in time with Megan's contractions. Instinctively, Catherine placed it in Megan's hand. The moment their skin touched, the key brightened intensely, illuminating the cabin more effectively then the candles and fireplace combined. It feels, Megan began, wonder in her voice. Right, Catherine finished. It feels right. Outside, the storm reached a fever-pitched snow and wind, battering the cabin's exterior, while the strange protective barrier of light held firm. Inside, an impossible warmth suffused every corner, banishing shadows and pain alike. Megan's next contraction came with less agony, the key in her hands seeming to absorb some of her suffering. The baby's coming, Catherine announced, positioning herself to assist with the delivery. When I tell you to push, give it everything you have. Megan nodded, determination replacing fear in her eyes. As she prepared for the final stage of labor, a realization crystallized in her mind, a truth so obvious, she couldn't believe she hadn't seen it before. Catherine, she said urgently, what was your maiden name? Surprised by the question at such a moment, Catherine answered automatically. Mitchell. Why? Megan's face transformed with shock. Mitchell, are you sure? Of course I'm sure. Catherine Jane Mitchell, before I became Catherine Hayes. That's my name, Megan whispered. Megan Mitchell. Catherine froze, the implications washing over her. It's a common name, she said, but uncertainty tinged her voice. Where was your family from? My father's from Oak Ridge, but my mother's people came from Greenfield. Megan pressed even as another contraction built. Just over the mountain, Catherine finished. How did you know that? Because that's where my father's family is from, the Mitchells of Greenfield. Megan clutched the glowing key tighter. Catherine, I think we're related. The revelation hung between them, electric with possibility. Before Catherine could respond, the most powerful contraction yet seized Megan. The key in her hand blazed with light shooting beams toward the ceiling, where they formed intricate, swirling patterns. Push now, Catherine commanded, professional instincts taking over. Megan bore down with all her remaining strength. Outside, the storm reached its climax, the wind a deafening roar. The cabin itself seemed to hold its breath as Megan pushed again and again, the key pulsing brighter with each effort. One more, Catherine encouraged. I can see the head. One more big push. With a final monumental effort, Megan pushed. The key in her hand suddenly turned by itself as if inserted into an invisible lock. A sound like distant chimes filled the cabin as Megan cried out, a perfect combination of agony and triumph that has heralded new life since time immemorial. While Catherine helped Megan through the final moments of delivery, the younger woman noticed a small wooden chest near the fireplace she hadn't seen before. Could you bring me some water? She asked between labored breaths. Catherine nodded, moving to the kitchen. The moment she was out of sight, Megan, driven by an inexplicable compulsion, reached toward the chest. It opened at her touch, revealing a single envelope yellowed with age, addressed simply, "To my child." With trembling fingers, Megan extracted the letter, unfolding it carefully. The handwriting was elegant, but unsteady, as if written through tears. My dearest Abigail, if you're reading this, it means I finally found the courage to let you go. It's been 7 months since you left me, and the world feels impossibly empty without the possibility of you in it. They tell me to move on, to try again, but they don't understand that you were not replaceable. You were my only chance at motherhood, my only connection to your father. The doctors say it was no one's fault, a tragedy without reason. But I blame myself for not being strong enough, for not knowing something was wrong, for failing you before you even had a chance to live. Your father would have been such a wonderful parent. He used to talk to you every night, his hands gentle on my belly, telling you stories of all the adventures you'd have together. When the military chaplain came to our door, my first thought wasn't of myself, but of you growing inside me, never to know your father's voice. Perhaps that grief is what took you from me too. If so, I am doubly cursed for failing you both. I keep your cradle ready, your blankets washed. Some nights I wake thinking I've heard you cry. The neighbors worry, but I can't bring myself to pack away your things, to admit you're never coming. Know that you were wanted. Know that you were loved. Know that somewhere in whatever comes after this life your father is holding, you, keeping you safe until we can be together again. Always and forever yours, Mom. Megan folded the letter with reverent care, tears streaming down her face. Catherine returned with the water, immediately noticing Megan's distress. What's wrong? Is the pain worse? Megan shook her head, unable to speak, and handed Catherine the letter. As the older woman read her own words from 7 years ago, her face drained of color. Where did you find this? She whispered. The chest opened for me. Megan gestured toward it. I think I was meant to see it. Catherine's hands shook as she refolded the letter. I wrote this the night before I moved here. I never sent it anywhere. Never showed it to anyone. Her eyes met Megan's wide with disbelief. The chest was locked. I lost the key years ago. Megan held up the strange brass key that had appeared in Catherine's pocket earlier, its glow now subdued but still present. This key, before Catherine could answer, Megan gasped as the strongest contraction yet seized her. The cabin seemed to contract with her walls creaking inward before expanding again as the pain subsided. It's time, Catherine said, professional demeanor returning despite her shock. The baby's coming now. Outside, the mysterious lights intensified their glow, penetrating every crevice of the cabin. The storm reached an impossible crescendo, snow falling so thickly it obscured everything beyond the windows. Yet inside, warmth and light prevailed. I need you to push with the next contraction, Catherine instructed, positioning herself to receive the baby. Push like your life depends on it. Megan bore down with renewed determination, the letter's discovery giving her strength she hadn't known she possessed. As she pushed, the cabin filled with a sound like distant music, not quite audible, but felt in the marrow of their bones. Again, Catherine encouraged. The head is crowning. Megan pushed once more, crying out with the effort. The key in her hand pulsed with light, its glow enveloping both women in a golden aura. The cabin itself seemed to breathe with them, expanding and contracting in rhythm with Megan's efforts. One more, Catherine said, her voice steady despite the extraordinary circumstances. One more big push. Gathering her remaining strength, Megan gave a final monumental push. The key in her hand turned once more in its invisible lock, and the music that had been just beyond hearing suddenly crystallized into a perfect, bell-like tone that resonated through the cabin. Oh, Megan. Catherine breathed, her voice filled with wonder. Oh, my dear, you have a daughter. The newborn's cry pierced the air, strong, vibrant, alive. As Catherine placed the tiny, perfect child on Megan's chest outside, and as if in response, the storm abruptly ceased. The wind died away to nothing. The snow stopped falling, and the mysterious lights that had surrounded the cabin coalesced into a single brilliant star directly overhead. Inside, bathed in its glow, two women who had been strangers hours before wept together over the miracle they had witnessed, the miracle they had together brought into the world. The newborn's cries softened as Megan cradled her against her chest, instinctively knowing what to do, despite never having held an infant before. Catherine worked efficiently, cutting and tying the umbilical cord, checking the baby's vital signs, her professional demeanor belied by the wonder in her eyes. She's perfect, Catherine whispered gently, cleaning the tiny girl with warm water. Absolutely perfect. Megan couldn't tear her gaze from her daughter's face, the delicate nose, the rosebud mouth, the wisps of dark hair plastered to her head. I can't believe she's really here, she murmured. That we made it, as if responding to some unheard signal, a small, intricately carved wooden music box on the mantelpiece, unnoticed by either woman until now, suddenly opened. A gentle melody filled the cabin, hauntingly beautiful and strangely familiar. That song, Megan said, looking up in surprise. I know that song. Catherine nodded slowly, her face pale. So do I. My mother used to sing it to me. She moved to the mantelpiece, examining the music box with trembling fingers. This was hers, but I've never been able to make it work. The mechanism broke decades ago. The melody continued, notes cascading like water over stones. The baby quieted, turning her head toward the sound with an awareness that seemed impossible in one so newly born. My grandmother used to sing it too, Megan said. She said it was a lullaby passed down through generations of Mitchell women. She hummed along, the notes coming to her as naturally as breathing. Catherine joined her, their voices twining together in perfect harmony, though they had never sung together before. As they reached the chorus, both women were struck simultaneously by the same memory. A summer day, a lakeside dock, a young woman teaching a little girl the words to an old family song. I remember you. Megan breathed, the realization breaking over her like dawn. You used to visit Greenfield when I was small. You held me on your lap and taught me this song. Catherine's eyes widened as the fragmented memory crystallized. Megan Mitchell, little Megan with the missing front teeth and the braids. She shook her head in disbelief. You were 5, maybe 6. It was the summer after Robert died. I was staying with my cousin. My grandfather, Megan finished. William Mitchell, yes. Catherine confirmed, sitting heavily in her rocking chair. William, he invited me to spend the summer. Thought it might help me heal. She looked at Megan with new eyes. You're William's granddaughter, which makes us family. Megan said, simply looking down at her newborn daughter with wonder. We're family. The baby made a small sound of contentment, tiny fingers flexing against Megan's skin. Outside, the night had cleared completely. Stars shone with unusual brilliance in the winter sky, their light reflecting off the pristine snow to bathe the world in silver. Catherine moved to sit beside Megan, gently stroking the baby's cheek with one finger. I knew there was something familiar about you from the moment you arrived, something I couldn't quite place. The circle is complete, Megan murmured, echoing the words from the prophecy. When the lost mother finds the mother lost. As if in response, the music box's melody shifted slightly, the notes rearranging themselves into a variation of the original song. Both women felt a curious sensation, as if time itself had slowed around them, creating a pocket of perfect stillness in which only the three of them existed. What will you name her? Catherine asked softly. Megan looked up, her decision already made with absolute certainty. Abigail. Her name is Abigail. Catherine's breath caught tears filling her eyes. Are you sure? I've never been more sure of anything, Megan replied. It's who she is, who she was always meant to be. As the name was spoken, the music box's melody reached its crescendo. The baby Abigail opened her eyes for the first time, revealing irises of an impossible luminous blue that seemed to hold all the wisdom of ages within them. Both women gasped. Those were not the eyes of a newborn, unfocused and new to the world. Those eyes held recognition, purpose, love. She knows us, Megan whispered. Both of us, Catherine agreed, voice hushed with awe. The music box completed its song, the final notes hanging in the air like a benediction. As the melody faded, time seemed to resume its normal flow. The baby's eyes drifted closed, her features relaxing into normal newborn serenity. But something had changed in the cabin, something fundamental and irreversible. The air itself felt different, charged with possibility and renewal. The grief that had permeated Catherine's sanctuary for 7 long years had been replaced by something new, hope in both name and essence. Outside, the first light of dawn touched the eastern horizon, painting the snow-covered landscape in gentle pink and gold. A new day was beginning, the first of a life none of them could have imagined mere hours before. Morning light spilled through the cabin windows as Catherine tended to both mother and child. Megan had drifted into an exhausted sleep, Abigail nestled securely beside her in the hand-carved cradle. Catherine moved quietly, replenishing the fire, preparing a simple breakfast, her mind still processing the extraordinary events of the night. When she gently lifted the sleeping infant to check on her, Catherine noticed something she'd missed in the dim light of dawn, a small birthmark on the baby's shoulder shaped like a crescent moon with a star beside it. Her breath caught. It can't be. The birthmark was identical to the symbol drawn in the margins of her family Bible, next to the prophecy about the winter's child. Identical, too, to a marking that had adorned her own daughter's shoulder, the daughter who had never drawn breath. Catherine's hands trembled as she traced the mark with one finger. Abigail opened her eyes, fixing Catherine with that same unnervingly aware gaze. A tiny hand reached up, grasping Catherine's finger with surprising strength. "Who are you, little one?" Catherine murmured. "What miracle have you brought us?" As if in answer, the infant's face broke into an impossible smile. Impossible because newborns weren't capable of such expressions. Yet there it was, a smile of absolute knowing, of ancient wisdom, housed in this most innocent of vessels. Megan stirred, opening her eyes to find Catherine standing frozen, staring at her daughter with wonder and shock. "What is it?" Wordlessly, Catherine turned the baby slightly, revealing the birthmark. Megan gasped. "The symbol from the prophecy." Catherine nodded. "And the same mark my daughter had." She met Megan's eyes. "My Abigail." The implications hung between them, too vast to fully comprehend. Outside, the sun had fully risen, revealing a world transformed. The snow sparkled like diamonds, pristine and untouched. The storm that had raged all night had left no damage. Not a single broken branch or downed power line marred the perfect winter landscape. "I feel strange." Megan attempted to sit up, suddenly lightheaded. Catherine's professional concern immediately overtook her metaphysical wonderings. She checked Megan's pulse, finding it rapid and thready. The young mother's face was too pale, her skin clammy to the touch. "You're bleeding." Catherine pulled back the blankets to reveal a spreading crimson stain. Postpartum hemorrhage. With practiced efficiency, Catherine gathered supplies from her medical kit. I need to massage your uterus to help it contract. It's going to hurt, but it's necessary. Megan nodded weakly, her gaze drifting to her daughter. Take care of her. If I don't. None of that. Catherine's voice was firm. You're going to be fine, both of you. But as Catherine worked to stem the bleeding, she felt a cold fear grip her heart. They were miles from the nearest hospital, the phone lines were down, and Megan was losing blood at an alarming rate. She needed medical intervention beyond what Catherine could provide in this remote cabin. Stay with me, Megan. Think of Abigail. She needs her mother. At the mention of her daughter's name, Megan's eyes refocused. Abigail. In the cradle, the baby began to cry. Not the normal wail of a newborn, but a sound almost like singing, high and clear and purposeful. The birthmark on her shoulder began to glow with a soft golden light. Catherine stared momentarily, forgetting her medical efforts. The light from the birthmark expanded, filling the room with warmth that could be felt as well as seen. It surrounded Megan, seeming to seep into her skin. Before Catherine's astonished eyes, Megan's color began to return. Her breathing steadied, her pulse strengthened, the bleeding impossibly slowed, and then stopped altogether. Catherine. Megan's voice was stronger now, confused. What's happening? Catherine shook her head beyond explanation. A miracle. Another miracle. The baby's cries ceased as abruptly as they had begun. The glow receded, though a faint luminescence remained around the birthmark. Abigail yawned, her expression once again that of a normal newborn. She saved me. Megan's voice held absolute certainty. Somehow she saved me. Catherine nodded slowly. I think there's much more to your daughter than either of us can comprehend. Outside, the sound of an approaching vehicle broke the stillness. Catherine moved to the window, surprised to see a snowplow making its way up her long, normally untended driveway. It seems we're about to have company. Catherine turned back to Megan with a bemused smile. And I have a feeling this is just the beginning. The snowplow driver was Henry Weber, Catherine's old friend and supply bringer. Bundled against the cold, his weathered face creased with concern as he stomped snow from his boots at the door. Catherine, thank God you're all right. Been trying to call since dawn, but lines are down all over. His gaze landed on Megan and the infant eyebrows shooting upward. Well, I'll be damned. Guess that explains the lights. What lights? Catherine pulled Henry away from the doorway, keeping her voice low. Whole town's talking. The sky above your place lit up like the 4th of July all night. Colors nobody's ever seen before. Henry removed his cap, twisting it in his hands. Some folks thought aliens. Others said the northern lights gone haywire. He leaned closer. Sheriff sent me to check because they know we're friends. What happened, Catherine? Catherine hesitated. Henry had been her only human contact for years, bringing supplies and respecting her solitude. If anyone could be trusted, it was him. She needs a doctor, Henry. The baby, too. Can you get Dr. Bennett out here? Henry nodded, already turning back toward his vehicle. Sarah Bennett, the new doc. Good choice. She keeps to herself, doesn't gossip. I'll bring her back myself. As Henry's snowplow disappeared down the drive, Catherine returned to Megan, who had managed to sit up, cradling Abigail against her chest. Was that your friend? The one who brings supplies? Catherine nodded, settling into her rocking chair. Henry Weber, retired firefighter widower. Good man. He's going to bring a doctor, just as a precaution. Megan's arms tightened around her daughter. Will they try to take her? To study her? Her voice trembled with sudden fear. Not if I have anything to say about it. Catherine's voice hardened with protective resolve. Besides, I doubt anyone could take Abigail anywhere she doesn't want to go. She's already proven she has ways of protecting herself and you. The next few hours passed in a surreal calm. Megan nursed Abigail for the first time, marveling at the immediate bond between them. Catherine prepared a hearty stew, realizing she hadn't eaten in nearly 24 hours. The strange events of the night seemed almost dreamlike in the ordinary light of day, yet the evidence remained: the birthmark on Abigail's shoulder, the mysterious key, the letter that had been locked away for years. Henry returned with Dr. Sarah Bennett, a woman in her mid-30s, with intelligent eyes and a no-nonsense manner. Catherine had seen her in town occasionally, but had never spoken with her. Bennett carried a medical bag that looked far more modern than Catherine's vintage kit. Dr. Bennett examined both mother and child with professional thoroughness, her expression growing increasingly perplexed. You gave birth just hours ago, and you had postpartum hemorrhaging. Megan nodded to both questions. That's remarkable. Bennett double-checked her findings. You show no signs of blood loss or trauma. And the baby, she checked Abigail again, listening to her heart testing her reflexes. She appears to be in perfect health. Better than perfect, if that's possible. Catherine and Megan exchanged knowing glances, but offered no explanation. Well, Bennett packed up her equipment. Whatever happened here last night, it seems to have worked out extraordinarily well. She paused, noticing the book of pressed flowers that had mysteriously revived, now blooming vibrantly in the dead of winter. Are those blooming in January? It's been a night of many miracles. Catherine's answer was deliberately vague. After Dr. Bennett departed, promising to return in a few days to check on mother and child, Catherine prepared a light lunch for them both. The cabin felt different now, warmer, more alive, as if awakening from a long hibernation alongside its owner. She seemed perplexed by my recovery. Megan observed, gently rocking Abigail in the crook of her arm. Catherine nodded, setting bowls of soup on the small kitchen table. Medical science doesn't account for what happened here last night. As they ate, Catherine was drawn to an old filing cabinet in the corner of the room. She hadn't opened it in years, but now felt compelled to search through its contents. In the bottom drawer beneath the stacks of old correspondence, she found what she hadn't known she was looking for, a yellowed medical report dated 20 years earlier. What is it? Megan noted Catherine's sudden stillness. My medical records. Catherine's voice was distant as she read, from after I lost the baby. She brought the document to the table, spreading it flat between their soup bowls. The clinical language described a complete hysterectomy following complications from her stillbirth. The doctor's notes were compassionate but final. Patients should be counseled that future pregnancies are not possible. This is why I never tried again. Even after years had passed and I might have been ready. Catherine traced the words with her fingertip. There was no possibility. Megan reached across the table, covering Catherine's hand with her own. I'm so sorry. Abigail stirred in her makeshift bassinet, making soft cooing sounds. As both women turned to look at her, they gasped in unison. The baby was surrounded by a gentle golden aura similar to the light that had healed Megan hours earlier. Before their astonished eyes, the words on the medical report began to shift and change, letters rearranging themselves as if being rewritten by an invisible hand. Where the document had definitively stated Catherine's inability to bear children, it now read, partial hysterectomy performed, potential for future fertility preserved due to unusual anatomical configuration. This isn't possible. Catherine stared at the altered document. I remember the surgery, the recovery. I remember the doctor explaining that I would never have children. And yet, Megan gestured toward the changed report. And yet, Catherine agreed, a wild hope beginning to bloom within her chest. She rose abruptly, moving to a small mirror hanging near the door. With trembling hands, she examined her reflection, the face that had looked back at her for 57 years lined now with age and grief. But something was different. The silver that had threaded her dark hair for decades seemed less prominent. The deep creases around her eyes and mouth had softened. Megan, she said, voice shaking, do I look different to you? Megan studied her head, tilted thoughtfully. You look younger somehow. Less burdened. Abigail's soft cries drew their attention once more. Catherine moved to lift the infant, cradling her with practiced ease. As she held the child close, the glow surrounding Abigail intensified, enveloping them both in its warm light. What's happening? Megan watched the golden aura pulse and flow between her daughter and Catherine. I'm not sure, Catherine replied, though deep within some instinctive part of her understood perfectly. The baby's tiny hand pressed against Catherine's chest directly over her heart. A sensation like warm honey flowed through Catherine's body, concentrating in her lower abdomen, where the scars of her surgery had marked her for 2 decades. Suddenly overcome with dizziness, Catherine carefully passed Abigail back to Megan and sank into her rocking chair. The golden light slowly faded, though the warmth it had generated remained suffusing Catherine with a vitality she hadn't felt in years. Catherine, Megan's concerned voice seemed to come from far away. Are you all right? Catherine nodded, unable to speak, as the realization crystallized within her mind. The medical report hadn't been falsified or altered, it had been corrected. Reality itself had been rewritten. I think, she said slowly, your daughter just healed me, just as she healed you. But you weren't injured or ill. Megan's confusion was evident. Not in body perhaps, but in spirit. Impossibility. Catherine's eyes filled with tears of wonder. I think Abigail just gave me back something I thought was lost forever. The implications were too vast to fully comprehend. If Abigail could heal physical wounds, restore life to dead flowers, and even rewrite medical history, what were the limits of her abilities? What was she? A knock at the door interrupted their stunned contemplation. Dr. Bennett had returned, her expression apologetic. I'm sorry to bother you again, but I left my stethoscope, and she stopped short, staring at Catherine with naked shock. Catherine, what happened to you? What do you mean? You look different and younger. Bennett stepped closer, studying her with professional scrutiny. Is that even possible from her place by the window? Megan smiled down at her remarkable daughter. We're discovering that many things we thought impossible are merely waiting for the right moment to reveal themselves as miracles. The news spread through the small town despite Dr. Bennett's discretion. The miraculous birth during the worst storm in decades became an object of fascination. Reports of the strange lights above Catherine's cabin fueled speculation. Locals began finding excuses to drive past the secluded property, hoping to catch a glimpse of the mother and child rumored to possess extraordinary qualities. 3 days passed in a peaceful rhythm as Megan and Abigail recovered their strength. Henry kept visitors at bay, allowing only Dr. Bennett to check on them regularly. The doctor became increasingly fascinated by Abigail's inexplicable effect on her surroundings. Flowers bloomed in the dead of winter. Small injuries healed overnight. Even the wildlife behaved strangely. Birds perched on the windowsills, deer approached without fear, as if drawn to the infant's presence. On the morning of the 4th day, Catherine received an unexpected phone call. The lines had been restored, and the caller's identity shocked her into momentary silence. It's Jason Miller. The voice was uncertain, tentative. I need to speak with Megan. Catherine covered the receiver with her hand, turning to Megan, who sat nursing Abigail by the fire. It's Jason. He wants to talk to you. Megan's face paled, her arms tightening protectively around her daughter. How did he find us? It's a small town. Word travels. Catherine kept her hand over the receiver. You don't have to speak to him. Megan hesitated, then squared her shoulders. No, I need to face him. She handed Abigail to Catherine. Keep her safe. Before Catherine could protest, Megan took the phone, her voice surprisingly steady. Jason, how did you get this number? Catherine couldn't hear Jason's response, but she watched Megan's face harden, then shift to surprise, then confusion. Finally, Megan hung up without a goodbye, her expression troubled. He's in town, looking for me, for us. He says he's been searching since I disappeared. Claims he's worried. Do you believe him? Catherine bounced Abigail gently in her arms. No, Megan shook her head. He mentioned hearing interesting things about the baby, like he was fishing for information. Someone's been talking to him, telling him about Abigail. Catherine's protective instincts flared. We need to be careful. If Jason knows, others might too. People who would be far more interested in Abigail's abilities than her welfare. As if confirming their fears, Henry arrived that afternoon with troubling news. Strangers in town asking questions. A reporter from the county paper, a couple saying they're from some medical research foundation, and he lowered his voice, a preacher from one of those big churches in the city talking about signs and wonders. Catherine's heart sank. It was happening even faster than they'd feared. Thank you for the warning, Henry. We appreciate it. As she closed the door, she turned to find Megan watching her, fear evident in her eyes. It's starting, isn't it? People are going to come for her. Before Catherine could respond, the sound of an approaching vehicle drew their attention. This was no snowplow or local truck. The sleek black SUV screamed wealth and authority as it pulled up the driveway. Catherine moved to the window, peering through the curtains. 2 figures emerged from the vehicle, a man and woman in their 60s, their bearings stiff with tension. The man adjusted his tie nervously while the woman smoothed her coat. Eyes locked on the cabin door. Megan joined Catherine at the window, her sharp intake of breath confirming what Catherine already suspected. My parents. Catherine squeezed Megan's shoulder in silent support. We knew this moment would come. Better to face it together. Megan nodded, taking Abigail from Catherine's arms and cradling her close. The infant was awake but quiet, those remarkable blue eyes taking in everything with eerie awareness. A firm knock sounded at the door. Catherine smoothed her hair, straightened her sweater, and moved to answer, preparing to face the family she hadn't seen in decades, and to stand firmly beside the daughter and granddaughter they had rejected. She opened the door to reveal Andrew and Patricia Taylor, their faces tight with anxiety and disapproval. Patricia's gaze immediately searched the room behind Catherine, while Andrew stood stiffly, his right hand absently touching the gold pocket watch chain visible across his vest. Catherine. Patricia acknowledged with a curt nod. It's been a long time. 20 years, give or take. Catherine's reply was even. Please come in. The couple stepped into the cabin, the warmth of the space doing nothing to thaw their rigid postures. Their eyes found Megan sitting near the window with Abigail cradled in her arms, and Patricia gasped softly. Sarah. The name escaped her lips like a prayer as she took an involuntary step forward before catching herself. Mother? Father? Megan's greeting was cool, controlled. This is your granddaughter, Abigail. Andrew's expression hardened at the name, but Patricia moved closer, her composure cracking, to reveal the grandmother beneath the stern exterior. May I? Her hands extended toward the baby. After a moment's hesitation, Megan nodded carefully, transferring Abigail to her grandmother's arms. Patricia's face transformed as she gazed down at the infant, tears welling in her eyes. She's beautiful. Perfect. Andrew remained by the door, his expression unreadable. We've been worried sick. No word for months, then rumors about you giving birth during a storm. You could have died, Sarah. I nearly did. Megan's reply was calm. Catherine saved me, and then Abigail saved us both. Andrew's brow furrowed. What is that supposed to mean? Catherine gestured toward the living area. Perhaps we should all sit down. There's much to discuss. Reluctantly, Andrew joined them, perching uncomfortably on the edge of a chair. As Patricia settled on the sofa beside Megan, still holding the baby, Catherine prepared tea, the familiar ritual, giving her a moment to collect her thoughts. How much should they reveal about Abigail's extraordinary nature? As she returned with the teapot, Catherine noticed Andrew staring at his pocket watch with an expression of bewilderment. Is something wrong? My watch. He held it up, the gold case gleaming in the firelight. It stopped. Martha looked up. That watch hasn't stopped in 30 years. You're always bragging about its reliability. Andrew nodded, still frowning at the timepiece. It stopped at exactly 2:17. He looked at Megan. When was the baby born? Megan and Catherine exchanged a glance. 2:17 a.m. a.m. Megan confirmed. Exactly. Andrew's eyes widened slightly, but he said nothing, turning his attention to the tea Catherine offered him. How did you find us? We went to the address we had for Catherine in town. Patricia explained. The neighbors told us she'd moved out to this cabin years ago. Then we heard about a young woman giving birth during the storm. She trailed off, looking down at Abigail with wonder. We knew it had to be you. We came to bring you home, Andrew added firmly. Both of you. Megan tensed. I'm not sure we have a home with you anymore. Not after what was said. We were upset, Patricia said quickly. Shocked. We didn't mean... You meant every word. Megan's voice was gentle but firm. You said I had disgraced the family, that you couldn't face the congregation knowing your unmarried daughter was pregnant. Andrew shifted uncomfortably. We may have reacted hastily. You changed the locks, Megan reminded him. A heavy silence fell over the room. Abigail stirred in Patricia's arms, making soft cooing sounds. The infant opened her eyes, fixing Andrew with that unnervingly aware gaze. He started visibly, something like recognition flashing across his face. Her eyes, he murmured. They're just like your mother's. Patricia finished, looking up in surprise. I was just thinking the same thing. Catherine watched the interaction with interest. Andrew's mother, Catherine's aunt by marriage, had been known in the family for her insight and almost supernatural intuition that many had dismissed as coincidence or keen observation. She had forgotten that connection until this moment. Andrew reached for his watch again, frowning at its frozen hands. As he touched it, Abigail made a sound almost like laughter. To everyone's amazement, the watch suddenly ticked back to life, the second hand sweeping smoothly around its face. That Andrew trailed off, unable to find words for what he just witnessed. The first of many inexplicable things you'll encounter around your granddaughter, Catherine said quietly, if you choose to be part of her life. Patricia looked up sharply. What do you mean? Megan took a deep breath. Abigail is special, Mother, in ways we're only beginning to understand. She reached for her daughter, who returned to her arms willingly. And I won't expose her to judgment or shame. She deserves to be celebrated for the miracle she is. Miracle, Andrew repeated skeptically. Yes, Andrew, miracle. Catherine's voice was firm. I've been a nurse for 30 years. I've seen birth and death and everything in between. What happened in this cabin 4 nights ago transcended medical explanation. Andrew's eyes narrowed, his gaze moving from Catherine's rejuvenated appearance to the thriving flowers on the windowsill, flowers that shouldn't be blooming in winter, to his now functioning watch. Something in his rigid certainty seemed to waver. Tell us, Patricia said softly. Tell us everything. The conversation lasted well into the evening. Catherine and Megan took turns relating the events of that remarkable night, the storm, birth, the inexplicable phenomena surrounding Abigail. They shared the healing of Megan's hemorrhage, the revival of the pressed flowers, Catherine's apparent rejuvenation. Throughout their account, Andrew's expression remained skeptical, though Patricia's face showed increasing wonder and acceptance. I understand this is difficult to believe, Catherine concluded, but we've witnessed it with our own eyes. Abigail is extraordinary. Andrew shook his head slowly. You're asking us to accept that our granddaughter is some kind of, what, miracle worker, divine messenger. We're not asking you to label her, Megan replied firmly, only to accept that there's more to her than meets the eye. As if on cue, Abigail began to fuss in Patricia's arms. Megan took her daughter back, soothing her with a gentle rocking motion. The baby quieted immediately, fixing her grandmother with that unnervingly aware gaze. Patricia reached out tentatively, stroking Abigail's cheek with one finger. I believe you, she said softly. I don't understand it, but I believe you. Andrew sighed heavily, running a hand through his silver hair. I need time to process all this. Of course, Catherine's tone was conciliatory. It's a lot to take in. As the evening progressed, the tension gradually eased. Patricia helped prepare a simple dinner, asking Megan questions about her pregnancy and plans for the future. Andrew remained more reserved, but his rigid posture slowly relaxed as he watched his wife and daughter interact. Occasionally, his gaze would drift to Abigail's cradle, a mixture of wariness and wonder in his eyes. The next morning, Catherine emerged from her bedroom to find Andrew sitting alone at the kitchen table, a newspaper spread before him. The headline caught her attention immediately: Mysterious Healings Reported in Northbrook Area. The article described several cases of unexplained medical recoveries in the days following Abigail's birth, a child's asthma suddenly vanishing, an elderly man's arthritis improving overnight, a woman's decades-old scar disappearing. All had occurred within a 20-mile radius of Catherine's cabin. It's spreading, Andrew said quietly, pushing the paper toward her. Whatever power resides in that child, its influence is growing. Catherine read the article with increasing concern. This will draw attention, unwanted attention. Andrew nodded grimly. People will come looking for miracles. Scientists will want to study her. Religious figures will want to claim her. He met Catherine's eyes directly. What's your plan for protecting them? Catherine was struck by the shift in his tone, from skepticism to pragmatic concern, from judgment to protective instinct. We haven't thought that far ahead. Everything's happened so quickly. You need to think about it now, Andrew insisted, before this gets out of control. Megan entered the kitchen, Abigail cradled against her shoulder. What's going on? Catherine handed her the newspaper. Megan's face paled as she read. They don't mention us specifically, Catherine reassured her, but it won't take long for people to make the connection. We should leave. Megan's decision was immediate. Go somewhere no one knows us and live in hiding. Andrew asked. For how long? The child's entire life. The question hung in the air between them. Abigail stirred, making a soft sound that drew all eyes to her. In the morning light, her birthmark seemed to shimmer with a subtle iridescence. She needs protection, Patricia said from the doorway, having overheard the conversation. But she also needs community, a chance at a normal life, whatever that might mean for her. Andrew looked at his wife with surprise. Patricia had always been the more traditional of the two, the one who worried most about appearances and social standing. Yet here she was, advocating for her unconventional granddaughter. What do you suggest? He asked. Patricia stepped fully into the kitchen, her expression resolute. We face this together as a family. The word hung in the air. Family. After months of estrangement, after years of Catherine's self-imposed isolation, the concept felt both foreign and deeply right. A knock at the door interrupted their contemplation. Catherine opened it to find Henry looking uncomfortable. Morning, Catherine. Sorry to bother you, but there's some folks in town asking about the baby. Reporter from the county paper, a couple of people saying they're from a medical research foundation. He lowered his voice. And a preacher from one of those big churches in the city talking about signs and wonders. Catherine's heart sank. It was happening even faster than they'd feared. Thanks for the warning, Henry. We appreciate it. As she closed the door, she turned to find the others watching her with varying expressions of concern. It's starting, she said simply. Andrew stood, decision made. Get packed, all of you. You're coming home with us tonight. Megan began to protest, but Patricia touched her arm gently. Not to stay, Patricia clarified. Just to regroup, to make a plan. Our house is large, private, and no one would think to look for you there. She glanced at Catherine. For any of you. Catherine met Andrew's gaze, reading the unspoken question there. After a moment's consideration, she nodded. We'll leave at dusk. Less chance of being seen. As they prepared to leave, Catherine found herself drawn to a small wooden box on the highest shelf in her bedroom closet. Inside lay the deed to the cabin, untouched since she'd moved in 7 years ago. She carefully unfolded the yellow document, scanning its contents with new eyes. The deed, dated 1873, described the property in the formal language of the era. What caught Catherine's attention was a notation she'd overlooked before, a reference to the land's previous designation as sacred ground of the Abenaki people site of healings and visions. Catherine sat heavily on her bed, the implications washing over her. This cabin, her refuge from the world, stood on land long associated with miraculous events. Had this been mere coincidence, or had some greater force drawn her here, preparing the ground for Abigail's arrival decades later? She carefully packed the deed along with a few essential belongings. Downstairs, Megan was gathering Abigail's things while Patricia helped pack food for the journey. Andrew had gone ahead to ensure the road remained clear and to watch for any unwanted visitors. I found something interesting. Catherine showed Megan the deed, pointing out the notation about the cabin's history. Megan read it, her eyes widening. So this place has always been special. Catherine nodded. Perhaps that's why the storm brought you here, of all places. Why the prophecy was fulfilled here. A soft knock at the door interrupted them. Patricia tensed, but Catherine recognized the pattern, 3 soft taps. Andrew's signal that the coast was clear. She opened the door to find not only Andrew, but also Dr. Bennett, looking apologetic and concerned. I hope I'm not intruding. The doctor's voice was low. But there's something you should know. Catherine ushered her inside, closing the door quickly against the gathering dusk. People are talking, Dr. Bennett continued without preamble, about miraculous healings, about a special child born during the storm. She glanced at Abigail, sleeping peacefully in Megan's arms. And someone's been asking questions at the clinic. A man claiming to be from a pharmaceutical research company, very interested in the anomalous medical events of the past week. Did you tell him anything? Andrew asked sharply. Dr. Bennett shook her head. Doctor-patient confidentiality. But he's persistent, and he's not alone. There's a reporter, a self-proclaimed faith healer, and others. She turned to Catherine. They'll find you eventually. This town isn't big enough for secrets. We're leaving tonight, Catherine assured her. Thank you for the warning. Bennett hesitated, then reached into her bag. I brought something for the baby. A gift. She handed Catherine a small silver pendant on a delicate chain. It was my grandmother's. She was a healer in our village in India. Not a doctor, but someone people turned to when medicine failed them. Catherine accepted the pendant, touched by the gesture. Thank you. There have always been special children in this world, Dr. Bennett said softly. My grandmother spoke of them, children who come bearing gifts beyond our understanding. She smiled at Abigail. They need protection, yes, but they also need guides who understand their purpose. After the doctor left, they finished their preparations in thoughtful silence. As twilight deepened, they loaded the cars. Catherine would ride with Megan and Abigail in Andrew's SUV, while Patricia would drive Catherine's seldom-used sedan. Just as they were about to leave, the sound of an approaching vehicle sent them back inside, dousing lights and peering cautiously through the curtains. A sleek black car pulled up, its headlights illuminating the cabin's exterior. A familiar figure emerged. It's Jason, Megan whispered, her face paling. Abigail's father. Catherine felt a surge of protective anger. How did he find you, small town? Andrew reminded them grimly. Word travels. Jason approached the cabin, his confident stride betraying no hint of the man who had abandoned Megan in her time of need. He knocked firmly on the door, waited, then knocked again more insistently. We could wait him out, Patricia suggested. Megan shook her head, a resolved expression settling over her features. No, I need to face him. She handed Abigail to Catherine. Keep her safe. Before anyone could protest, Megan moved to the door and opened it, standing tall in the frame to block any view of the cabin's interior. Jason's voice carried clearly in the evening air. Sarah, thank God. I've been so worried. Have you? Megan's tone was coolly polite. That's a recent development then. I've been trying to find you for months, Jason insisted. Your parents wouldn't tell me anything. With good reason, Andrew muttered from his position by the window. What do you want, Jason? Megan's question was direct. He stepped closer. I heard about the baby, about the unusual circumstances. His voice lowered. People are saying things, Sarah. Extraordinary things. People talk. Megan's reply was even, especially in small towns. I want to see my child. Jason's tone hardened slightly. I have rights. Rights? Megan's laugh held no humor. You forfeited any rights when you walked out on us. When you said, and I quote, deal with it yourself, I was scared. Jason admitted, his voice softening to the persuasive tone Megan once found charming. I made a mistake. I want to make it right. He reached for her hand. We could be a family, the three of us. From her position by the window, Catherine could see what Megan could not, the calculating look in Jason's eyes, the way they darted past her to scan the cabin's interior. This was not the visit of a penitent father, but a man who had heard rumors of something valuable and had come to claim his share. Inside Catherine's arms, Abigail stirred, her blue eyes opening wide. The birthmark on her shoulder began to glow faintly, pulsing like a silent warning. Jason, Megan said firmly, I don't believe you, and even if I did, you can't just walk back into our lives after everything that happened. His charming facade slipped slightly. At least let me see the baby. My daughter, our daughter, Megan corrected. And no, not tonight. We're leaving. Leaving where was? He tried to look past her into the cabin. Is it true what they're saying about the baby having some kind of abilities? Goodbye, Jason. Megan began to close the door, but he put his hand out to stop it. Wait, Sarah, please. Before he could finish, Andrew appeared behind Megan, his imposing frame filling the doorway. I believe my daughter asked you to leave. Jason hesitated, clearly weighing his options. Mr. Taylor, I was hoping to speak with you as well, father to father, about my child's future. Your concern is touching, if belated. Andrew's reply was dry. But now isn't the time. We have arrangements to make. What arrangements? Jason pressed. People are talking about miracles, about healings. If there's something special about my daughter, I have a right to know. Inside the cabin, Abigail began to cry. Not her usual soft sounds, but a distressed wail that pierced the growing tension. Catherine tried to soothe her, but the infant's distress only intensified as Jason's voice grew more insistent. She knows, Patricia whispered. Somehow she knows he's not here for the right reasons. Catherine nodded, moving toward the back door with the crying child. We need to go now. Outside, the confrontation continued. Jason's pleasant mask had dropped, completely replaced by calculated intensity. There's a man in town, he said, lowering his voice conspiratorially, a researcher with connections to major pharmaceutical companies. He's very interested in these reports of spontaneous healing. Very interested. He met Andrew's gaze meaningfully, the kind of interest that comes with substantial financial backing. Andrew's expression hardened. You came here to sell information about your own child. Jason had the grace to look momentarily ashamed before rallying. I came to explore opportunities. For all of us. Think about it, Mr. Taylor. If these rumors are true, if the baby really has some kind of gift, there are people who would pay anything to understand it, to replicate it. Get off my property. Andrew's voice was deadly calm. You're making a mistake, Jason insisted. We could all benefit from this. Sarah and the baby would be set for life. Megan stepped forward, her eyes blazing. My daughter is not a research subject or a source of income. She's a child, a miracle. Don't be naive, Jason scoffed. Miracles can be monetized like anything else. The sound of shattering glass from inside the cabin startled them all. Andrew pushed Megan behind him, stepping toward Jason with unmistakable menace. You have 10 seconds to get back in your car and drive away, or I'll show you exactly how seriously I take threats to my family. Jason backed up, hands raised in a placating gesture. This isn't over. That's my child too, and I have rights. Writes you'll have a hard time claiming that after abandonment, Andrew countered. Now go. As Jason reluctantly retreated to his car, Patricia appeared at the back door, her face tight with worry. Someone tried to break in, she reported in a hushed voice. Catherine took Abigail out the side door to the car. We need to leave now. Andrew nodded, ushering Megan toward their vehicle, while keeping one eye on Jason's retreating car. Stay together, he instructed. We'll head straight for the highway. As they pulled away from the cabin, Megan looked back at the small structure that had sheltered her during the most transformative days of her life. The sight that met her eyes made her gasp. The cabin was surrounded by a soft golden glow, visible only for a moment before they turned onto the main road. Did you see that, she asked? Catherine nodded, cradling Abigail close. It's protecting itself, just as it protected us. They drove in tense silence for several miles, watching for any sign of pursuit. Abigail had calmed once they were away from the cabin, now sleeping peacefully in Catherine's arms. Martha was the one who finally broke the quiet. We can't keep running, she observed from the front seat. Sooner or later, we'll have to decide how to live with this miracle we've been given. From the driver's seat, Andrew spoke unexpectedly. I've been thinking about that. He reached into his coat pocket and withdrew a folded paper, an architectural drawing freshly sketched. Catherine leaned forward to see the drawing. It showed the cabin, but expanded with additional structures surrounding it, a small complex of buildings centered around the original structure. A sanctuary, Andrew explained, not just for Abigail, but for others who need healing. A place that honors the sacred ground it's built on. Sarah stared at her father in amazement. You'd do that after everything you said about the shame of my situation? Andrew's hands tightened on the steering wheel. I was wrong, he said simply. About many things. Catherine studied the drawing with growing appreciation. The cabin always was meant to be a place of healing, she mused. Even when I thought I was hiding from the world, I was actually preparing for this. For Abigail, for all of you. Megan reached back to touch her daughter's tiny hand. What do you think, little one, is this our purpose? Abigail's eyes opened briefly, that uncanny awareness shining through. The birthmark on her shoulder glowed softly as if in answer. Andrew's pocket watch lying on the dashboard began ticking backward for exactly 17 seconds before resuming its normal function. None of them spoke what was there to say in the face of such mysteries. As the SUV sped through the winter night, carrying its precious cargo toward temporary sanctuary, Catherine felt a profound sense of rightness settle over her. For 7 years, she had hidden from the world, nursing her grief in solitude. Now, through a series of seemingly impossible events, she had been given a second chance at family, at purpose, at healing others, as she herself had been healed. Whatever came next, whatever challenges awaited them, they would face together, bound by blood and by the miraculous child who had brought them together through a winter's fury. Andrew's SUV crested the hill, revealing a sprawling farmhouse surrounded by snow-covered fields and a distant tree line. The Taylor family homestead stood impressive against the winter backdrop, 2 stories of classic American architecture, with a wide front porch and dormer windows jutting from the sloped roof. Security lights illuminated the property, motion sensors triggering as the vehicles approached. Megan exhaled slowly, tension radiating from her shoulders. 3 months ago, she'd fled this place with nothing but a backpack and wounded pride. Now she was returning with a miracle child and an unexpected extended family. How quickly life could transform from desolation to purpose. The garage door rose automatically as Andrew pressed a remote. The SUV slid into the spacious 3-car garage beside a gleaming pickup truck. Catherine gently passed the sleeping Abigail back to Megan as Patricia pulled up in Catherine's sedan. Let's get you settled quickly. Andrew's authoritative tone was different now, protective rather than judgmental. I've activated the security system. Motion detectors on all approaches. Cameras at entry points. If anyone comes near, we'll know. Catherine studied him with newfound appreciation. She'd forgotten this side of her distant cousin, the meticulous planner, the protector. His pastoral vocation had obscured the pragmatic core beneath the spiritual leader. The house interior glowed with warmth that belied the family's recent fractures. Rich hardwood floors, comfortable furniture, and family photos chronicling generations of Mitchells and Taylors. Catherine noticed Megan's graduation portrait prominently displayed despite the recent estrangement, Patricia's silent rebellion against Andrew's harsh stance, perhaps. I've prepared your old room, Megan. Patricia guided them upstairs and set up the nursery furniture in the connecting room. Her voice wavered. We bought it when we first heard about the baby, before everything fell apart. Megan's eyes widened at this revelation. The nursery was immaculate, pale yellow walls, a white crib with forest animal bedding, a rocking chair positioned by a window overlooking the back property. Her parents had created this space during the same period they had pushed her away, the contradiction speaking of volumes about their internal struggle between public appearance and private love. You've been planning for us all along. The accusation hung in Megan's quiet observation. Patricia's fingers twisted her wedding ring. We were wrong, Megan. So terribly wrong. The congregation's opinion mattered more than our daughter's welfare. We let pride override compassion. Andrew and I have been at odds since you left. He slept in the guest room for weeks. Catherine and Megan exchanged glances, both recognizing the rare glimpse into the Taylor marriage, a relationship apparently more complex than Megan had understood during her anger and exile. Andrew appeared in the doorway, arms laden with luggage. I've secured the perimeter. No sign of pursuit, but I've called some friends to keep watch tonight. Former military buddies who owe me favors and know how to be discreet. The retired pastor's connections surprised Catherine, who'd always viewed Andrew as purely a man of the cloth. The mention of military friends added another dimension to his character, one that might prove vital in the days ahead. Abigail stirred in Megan's arms, tiny eyelids fluttering open to reveal those impossible blue eyes. The room temperature rose perceptibly as she awakened, frost patterns on the window receding, despite the frigid night outside. Andrew stared, witnessing firsthand the child's ambient influence on her surroundings. The things Jason said. He began, voice trailing off as he processed the implications of what he was witnessing. The pharmaceutical research, people paying to study her. His expression hardened into resolve. We need to understand what we're dealing with, what these people might want, who might come looking. Catherine placed the silver pendant Dr. Bennett had given her around Abigail's neck. The tiny crescent moon matched the birthmark on the infant's shoulder. My medical background only explains so much of what we've witnessed. This goes beyond science as we understand it. Reluctantly, they settled into an uneasy first night at the Taylor home. Catherine took the guest room across from Megan and Abigail, while Andrew established a rotation of nighttime checks, his pastoral demeanor giving way to the discipline of a man with military connections. Patricia prepared a midnight meal comfort food that spoke of reconciliation efforts where words failed. The night passed without incident, though none of them slept deeply. By morning, Andrew had transformed the dining room into an impromptu command center laptop open to security camera feeds, local maps spread across the table, a notepad filled with names and contact information. I've reached out to 3 trusted men from my service days. Andrew circled locations on the county map. They'll rotate surveillance on the approaches to our property. Former special forces, all of them. Men who can spot trouble before it arrives. Catherine raised an eyebrow at this revelation. Special forces? Andrew, I always thought you were a military chaplain. He looked up, a ghost of a smile crossing his weathered face. Before seminary, I spent 6 years with the 5th Special Forces Group. Afghanistan, Iraq. That's where I found my calling to ministry in the worst places where faith matters most. This disclosure shifted Catherine's understanding of her cousin's husband, the rigid morality suddenly contextualized by a history of witnessing humanity at its extremes. The man who had rejected his pregnant daughter had also seen enough combat to value both strict codes and profound mercy. Megan descended the stairs with Abigail, who was alert despite the early hour. The infant's gaze tracked around the room with unnerving focus. As she surveyed her surroundings, the wilted poinsettia on the sideboard, a remnant of Christmas decorations, suddenly straightened, dry leaves plumping with renewed vigor, vibrant red returning to the faded bracts. Andrew froze mid-sentence, pen hovering over his map. That plant was completely dead. Patricia tried everything to revive it for weeks. Catherine nodded. She does this, heals things, creates life where there was none. Remember my medical records, the physical evidence of my hysterectomy that she somehow revised. The retired pastor's theological framework visibly struggled against witnessed reality. Miracles are God's province, not a child's. Perhaps she's a conduit, not the source. Catherine's suggestion built a bridge between Andrew's faith and the inexplicable phenomena, the vessel rather than the power itself. This perspective seemed to ease his theological discomfort. Andrew returned to his security preparations with renewed determination, now protecting not just his granddaughter, but potentially as something divine manifesting through her. Patricia emerged from the kitchen, phone in hand, face pale. That was Henry. There's a van parked at the end of Catherine's driveway. Men with equipment. He thinks they're setting up surveillance. A chill ran through the room. Jason had wasted no time leveraging his knowledge, whether for profit or a misguided attempt to reclaim his paternal rights remained unclear. And there's more, Patricia continued. A man came to the church office yesterday afternoon asking questions about us, about Megan, said he was from a medical research foundation, Preston Institute. Andrew's expression darkened. Dr. Elliot Crawford. His reputation precedes him, brilliant medical researcher with ethical flexibility. Specializes in anomalous healing phenomena, usually debunking them. But rumor has it he maintains private funding for research the mainstream medical community considers fringe. He's been tracking healing miracles for decades. Andrew pulled up a web page on his laptop. The Preston Institute presents itself as a legitimate medical research organization, but their true interests lie in phenomena that defy conventional explanation. Military applications primarily. Catherine's protective instincts flared. If they're watching the cabin, they'll eventually track us here. Megan clutched Abigail tighter. Can we stop them? Legally, restraining orders, trespassing charges. Andrew shook his head. We'd need to expose Abigail to get legal protection. Courts, paperwork, public records. Exactly what we're trying to avoid. The morning progressed with tense planning. Catherine helped Andrew compile information on Preston Institute while Patricia tended to Megan and Abigail's immediate needs. Throughout the house, small manifestations of Abigail's presence continued. Clocks synchronizing to the second houseplant's flourishing, a broken picture frame mysteriously mending itself when placed near her. Shortly after noon, an unexpected visitor triggered the perimeter alarm. Andrew accessed the security camera feed to reveal a familiar black sedan cautiously approaching the front gate. It's Bennett, Dr. Sarah Bennett. Catherine recognized the vehicle. She must have followed us or gotten the address from someone in town. Andrew activated the intercom. State your business, Dr. Bennett. The physician's voice crackled through the speaker. I need to speak with you, all of you. It's urgent about Preston Institute and what they're really after. After a brief security check, Dr. Bennett joined them in the living room. Her normally composed demeanor rattled. Crawford himself came to the clinic this morning, demanded access to all birth records from the past week, claiming a public health emergency. She removed her coat, revealing a leather messenger bag clutched protectively. When I refused, he implied my medical license could be in jeopardy, that he has connections with the state medical board. Dr. Bennett opened her bag, extracting a manila folder. Then I did some research. Preston isn't just studying healing phenomena, they're weaponizing them. Her fingers trembled slightly as she spread several photographs across the coffee table, images of military personnel in a laboratory setting, medical equipment, and subjects with monitoring devices attached to their bodies. A contact at Johns Hopkins sent these. Crawford's previous research projects. They're developing what they call biological force multipliers, people with enhanced healing capabilities deployed alongside combat units. The program's been operational since the early 2000s, largely classified. The implications settled heavily over the room. Andrew's military background provided immediate understanding that the others grasped only gradually. They don't want to study Abigail. They want to exploit her to replicate her abilities or harness them directly. Patricia gasped as the severity of the threat crystallized. These people have government connections. Military backing, not officially, Dr. Bennett clarified. Crawford operates in gray areas, private funding with unofficial military interest. Plausible deniability if anything goes wrong. But that makes him more dangerous, not less. No oversight, no ethical constraints. Catherine studied the photographs more closely, her medical training highlighting disturbing details. These subjects, they're exhibiting signs of exploitation. Medication to enhance compliance, possibly. Her finger traced a visible IV line in one image. They're not volunteers, they're captives. The revelation transformed their understanding of the danger. This wasn't merely unwanted attention from religious zealots or sensationalist media. This was a coordinated effort by powerful interests with virtually unlimited resources. Dr. Bennett looked directly at Megan. Crawford mentioned Jason Miller specifically, said he'd provided valuable intelligence about the subject. Those were his exact words. Megan's face hardened. Jason never wanted to reconcile. He's been working with them from the start. The confrontation outside the cabin, his calculated probing about Abigail's abilities, suddenly made perfect sense. Jason hadn't come seeking redemption, but verification of rumors for his Preston Institute handlers. We need to disappear. Catherine's conclusion was inevitable. Change identities, relocate far from here. Start over where no one can find us. Andrew shook his head. Running only works until they catch up. And they will catch up. Organizations like Preston have resources we can't comprehend. Global reach, surveillance capabilities, the infrastructure to find people who don't want to be found. Then what do you suggest? Megan's voice edged toward panic. We can't just wait for them to take her. We don't run. We stand our ground. Andrew's expression transformed pastoral gentleness, giving way to strategic resolve. On our terms, in a place where we control the variables. He returned to the dining room, beckoning them to follow. The architectural drawings he'd sketched in the car were now expanded into detailed plans. The cabin, Catherine's cabin, we fortify it, transform it into exactly what it appears to be, a healing center, but with our own security, our own people. Hide in plain sight. The audacity of the proposal stunned them into momentary silence. Catherine found her voice first. You want to establish a legitimate healing center with Abigail at its heart, publicly, not Abigail specifically. The place itself, Andrew clarified. We leverage the land's history as sacred ground. Create a narrative about natural healing properties of the location. The water, perhaps, or mineral deposits. We acknowledge unusual recovery rates without ever exposing Abigail as the source. Dr. Bennett nodded slowly, understanding dawning. A sanctuary disguised as a wellness retreat, with legitimate medical supervision to maintain credibility and our own security, Andrew added. My former teammates would welcome purpose after military service, men with the skills to protect without drawing attention. Catherine considered the cabin property with new eyes. The isolation that had appealed to her grief-stricken heart now offered strategic advantages, limited approaches, clear sightlines, natural boundaries. With proper development, it could become both functional healing center and defensible position. They won't stop searching just because we open a wellness center. Megan cradled Abigail, who watched the adults with eerie comprehension. Crawford will still come for her. Let him come. Andrew's voice held steel beneath the calm surface. On our ground, where we're prepared, where evidence of his unethical activities becomes his greatest vulnerability. The morning planning session extended into afternoon. Dr. Bennett offered medical insights and professional connections. Patricia, revealing unexpected business acumen, outlined potential funding sources and organizational structures. Catherine contributed her knowledge of the property's unique features and medical requirements for a legitimate healing facility. By evening, exhaustion settled over the group, but with it came the first fragile tendrils of hope, a path forward dangerous and uncertain, but preferable to perpetual flight. As night fell, Andrew positioned his first security contact at the property's edge, a nondescript man named Marcus, who arrived in a weathered pickup truck that belied his special forces background. Two more would arrive by morning, establishing a protective perimeter while maintaining the appearance of normal farm activity. Catherine awoke shortly after midnight to find Andrew in the kitchen, poring over satellite imagery of the cabin property. Couldn't sleep. He looked up, fatigue evident in the lines around his eyes. I keep thinking about what we're facing, about what Abigail represents. Catherine settled across from him, accepting the cup of coffee he offered. And what does she represent to you, Andrew? A miracle or a threat to your theological understanding? His hands stilled on the maps. Both. She defies explanation within my faith framework, yet I've witnessed enough to know something extraordinary is happening. His gaze met Catherine's. When I held her today, I felt peace, like nothing I've experienced since my service days. The certainty that I was exactly where I needed to be, doing exactly what I was meant to do. Catherine nodded, understanding completely. She has that effect. On all of us. A noise from the front of the house interrupted their conversation. Andrew moved with surprising speed and silence to the security monitors. Headlights approached slowly along the private drive, an unfamiliar vehicle proceeding cautiously through the snow. Wake the others, His voice remained calm despite the tension in his shoulders. Get them to the safe room in the basement. Code is 51782 on the keypad behind the storage shelves. Catherine hurried upstairs while Andrew retrieved something from a locked cabinet near the back door, a pistol which he checked with practiced efficiency before positioning himself with clear sightlines to the approaching vehicle. Within minutes, Catherine had guided Megan, Patricia, and Abigail to the concealed safe room, a reinforced space Andrew had apparently installed years earlier without Megan's knowledge. Dr. Bennett joined them, medical bag in hand, prepared for any contingency. The room contained emergency supplies, communications equipment, and multiple monitors displaying security camera feeds. They watched as the vehicle stopped short of the house. A lone figure emerged, not the tactical team they feared, but a familiar silhouette that made Megan gasp. Jason. He stood in the headlights, hands visible, no apparent weapons. Andrew approached cautiously, gun held low but ready. The security monitor captured their conversation. Andrew's stance hostile, Jason's body language surprisingly subdued. After several tense minutes, Andrew escorted Jason inside, keeping him in the main hallway away from the safe room's location. His voice came through the monitor speakers. He claims he needs to warn us. Says Crawford is planning to move on the cabin tonight, then track us here by morning. Says he's had a change of heart. Can we trust him? Patricia's whisper gave voice to everyone's concern. Megan studied the monitor, showing Jason's face. There's something different about him. The calculation is gone from his eyes. Abigail stirred in her arms, making a soft cooing sound. The infant's gaze fixed on the monitor, showing Jason, and for a moment her birthmark glowed faintly beneath her sleeper. I think we should hear him out. Megan's decision surprised them all. But keep him where he is. Keep Abigail hidden. When they emerged, all except Megan and Abigail, who remained secured, Jason stood awkwardly in the front hall, Andrew's gun still visible as a precaution. Jason's designer clothes were rumpled, his normally perfect appearance disheveled. Dark circles under his eyes suggested sleepless nights. Catherine was struck by the transformation. The ambitious medical student, who had abandoned his pregnant girlfriend, now looked haunted. His gaze darted nervously toward the stairs. Are they safe? Why are you here, Jason? Catherine kept her voice neutral, professional. I've made a terrible mistake. The words tumbled out in a rush. Crawford isn't who I thought he was. I saw their research facility, what they've done to other subjects. I thought this was about medical advancement, breakthroughs that could help people. But it's not. It's about control, weaponization. He withdrew a thumb drive from his pocket, placing it carefully on the hall table. Documentation, their real program, research protocols, subject histories, enough to expose them maybe, enough to ruin my medical career definitely. Andrew's posture remained skeptical. Why the sudden crisis of conscience? Jason's mask of confidence cracked entirely, revealing raw vulnerability beneath. I held her, just for a moment, at the cabin door. I felt he struggled to find words adequate to the experience complete. Like every broken part of me suddenly made sense. His eyes glistened with unexpected tears. She's not just special medically. She's transcendent. Catherine exchanged glances with Andrew, witnessing the same transformation they had all experienced upon connecting with Abigail. The infant seemed to awaken something dormant in those she touched: compassion, purpose, wholeness. If you're telling the truth, Megan's voice carried from the top of the stairs. If this is real, then prove it. Tell us exactly what Crawford is planning. When? How? Everything you know. Jason looked up, relief flooding his features at the sound of her voice, though Abigail remained hidden from view. 8-person team, military background, non-lethal tactics, they want the baby unharmed. ETA at the cabin around 2 a.m. When they find it empty, they'll track you here through town connections. They have someone inside the sheriff's office feeding them information. The specificity of the details lent credibility to his warning. Andrew checked his watch, just past midnight. If Jason's information was accurate, they had less than 2 hours before Crawford's team discovered the empty cabin, and perhaps 4 before they tracked the Taylor residence. We stick with the plan. Andrew's decision was immediate, but accelerate the timeline. We move to the cabin now ahead of them. Establish position before they arrive. Catherine's medical instincts protested. It's too dangerous. Megan just gave birth days ago. Abigail is newborn. And they'll be in far more danger if Crawford's team takes them, Andrew countered. The cabin is defensible. We know the terrain. They don't. Dr. Bennett spoke up for the first time since Jason's arrival. I'll accompany them, provide medical monitoring. Make sure neither mother nor child is endangered by the move. And what about him? Patricia gestured toward Jason, who stood isolated in the hallway, the pariah seeking redemption. All eyes turned to Megan, acknowledging her authority in this decision. She descended the stairs slowly, still keeping Abigail concealed from direct view. Jason's future involvement would be her choice alone. He comes with us. Her voice held no warmth, but the prior hatred had diminished. Under watch. If this is truly a change of heart, he can help us understand what we're facing. The next hour passed in controlled chaos, essential supplies loaded into vehicles, communications established between Andrew's security team members, escape routes mapped, and alternatives identified. Jason remained under constant supervision, contributing information about Crawford's tactics and team composition. By 1:30 a.m., they were prepared to move Andrew, driving the lead vehicle with Catherine, Dr. Bennett, and one security team member, Megan, Abigail, and Jason in the middle vehicle with Patricia. The remaining security personnel bringing up the rear in a modified pickup truck equipped with defensive capabilities Andrew chose not to explain in detail. As they pulled away from the Taylor residence, Catherine caught Jason watching Abigail in the rearview mirror. His expression a complex mixture of awe, regret, and protective determination. The ambitious medical student who had abandoned his pregnant girlfriend had been replaced by a man confronting the consequences of his choices and perhaps finding redemption in the most unexpected circumstances. The convoy traveled back roads, avoiding main highways where Crawford's team might establish interception points. Snow had begun falling again, providing both cover and challenging driving conditions. Through it all, Abigail remained oddly calm, her extraordinary eyes taking in the night journey with that unsettling awareness that defied her newborn status. They arrived at Catherine's cabin shortly before 2 a.m., beating Crawford's team by minutes, according to Jason's intelligence. The property stood silent under fresh falling snow, the cabin windows dark, no sign of the surveillance team Henry had reported. Too quiet. Andrew's military instincts registered the warning immediately. They're already here. As if confirming his assessment, a faint reflection of light on metal caught Catherine's eye, the barrel of a rifle positioned at the tree line barely visible through the falling snow. Andrew noticed it simultaneously, his hand moving to the weapon concealed beneath his coat. Before either could react, Abigail let out a high-pitched cry, not the normal wail of an infant, but a sound that seemed to pierce the very fabric of reality. The snow between their vehicles and the hidden gunman suddenly swirled upward in a localized vortex, obscuring visibility. The security floodlights Catherine had installed years ago blazed to life, despite the power being disconnected, bathing the clearing in harsh illumination that exposed three concealed figures in tactical gear. Exposed and disoriented, Crawford's advance team broke cover, falling back toward the tree line as Andrew's security personnel moved with practiced efficiency to establish a protective perimeter around the vehicles. Get them inside now. Andrew's command galvanized them into action. Catherine led the way to the cabin door, key ready, while Jason surprised them all by placing himself as a human shield between the potential danger and Megan carrying Abigail. The cabin interior remained untouched, exactly as they had left it hours earlier. The cradle Robert had carved still waited near the fireplace. The ancient Bible lay open on the side table, pages fluttering slightly in the draft from the closing door. Is everyone all right? Catherine scanned the group for injuries as Andrew secured the perimeter. Megan nodded, her face pale but composed. Abigail had already settled against her chest, the crisis response apparently draining her newborn energy. Patricia helped Dr. Ma. Bennett established a medical monitoring station in the corner, while Jason hovered uncertainly near the door, unsure of his place in this fragile alliance. Andrew returned from his security check, expression grim. Crawford's advance team has fallen back, but they've established positions surrounding the property. We're effectively under siege. Catherine moved to the window, peering cautiously through the curtains at the tree line now obscured by intensifying snowfall. How many? At least 6 that we can confirm. Andrew's assessment was clinical. Professional operatives with military background, just as Jason warned. Non-lethal weaponry primarily, but deadly force capability as backup. Dr. Bennett joined Catherine at the window. They'll wait for Crawford himself. He'll want to be here to secure Abigail personally. Jason nodded in confirmation. Standard protocol. The extraction team establishes containment, then waits for the research lead to oversee subject acquisition. Subject acquisition. Catherine's voice dripped with disgust at the clinical terminology. She's a child, not a laboratory specimen. To Crawford, there's no difference. Jason's admission carried the weight of complicity. That's why I couldn't go through with it. When I realized what they really wanted, what they do to her in the name of research. A sudden thump against the cabin's rear wall interrupted his explanation. Andrew motioned for silence, moving soundlessly toward the noise weapon drawn. The cabin lights flickered, then steadied. Another thump, followed by the unmistakable sound of breaking glass. They're testing our defenses, Andrew's whisper barely carried across the room, trying to gauge our response capabilities. For several tense minutes, they waited in near total silence, broken only by Abigail's soft breathing. Then a new sound cut it through the quiet, the crunch of tires on snow headlights sweeping across the front windows as a vehicle approached confidently up the driveway. That'll be Crawford. Jason confirmed what they already suspected. He always arrives after the target is contained, minimizes his personal risk. Andrew positioned himself with clear sight lines to both front and rear approaches, his military training evident in every precise movement. Catherine joined Megan and Abigail, creating a protective formation with Patricia and Dr. Bennett. Jason hesitated, then placed himself between the group and the front door, a symbolic positioning that didn't escape Catherine's notice. The vehicle outside stopped. A car door opened and closed. Footsteps approached the cabin, unhurried, confident. A precise knock sounded on the door. Dr. Hayes, a cultured male voice called through the wood. I'm Dr. Elliot Crawford from the Preston Institute. I believe we have mutual interests to discuss. Andrew signaled for continued silence. Crawford knocked again more insistently. I know you're in there, Dr. Hayes and Ms. Taylor, and the remarkable child. We've been monitoring the property for days. The voice remained pleasant, reasonable. We're not here to harm anyone. Quite the contrary. We want to help you understand what you've discovered. Catherine felt a chill at the calculated charm in Crawford's tone, the sound of a man accustomed to getting what he wanted through a careful balance of intimidation and incentive. The infant you're protecting represents a breakthrough in human potential. Crawford continued his monologue, apparently undeterred by their silence. She deserves the best scientific minds to help develop her extraordinary gifts. The Preston Institute can provide resources beyond anything you could access privately. He paused, waiting for a response that didn't come. Then his tone shifted subtly, the velvet glove revealing the iron fist beneath. Of course, there are other considerations. Medical licensing boards take a dim view of unqualified practitioners. Child welfare services might question an infant being kept in such isolated conditions. And I understand Mr. Miller has certain paternal rights that have yet to be formally relinquished. The threat hung in the air, its implications clear. Crawford possessed the connections and influence to create legal nightmares that could separate Abigail from both Megan and Catherine through perfectly legitimate channels. Jason stepped forward, a decision crystallizing in his expression. Before anyone could stop him, he moved to the door. I'm coming out, Crawford. We need to talk. Andrew caught his arm, suspicious of betrayal, but Jason shook his head. Trust me, just this once, for her sake. After a moment's hesitation, Andrew released him, positioning himself to intervene if necessary. Jason opened the door just enough to slip through, closing it firmly behind him. Through the window, Catherine watched Jason confront his former employer, the ambitious student facing the powerful mentor who had promised advancement in exchange for information. Crawford's expression shifted from surprise to calculation as Jason gestured animatedly, his back to the cabin. What is he doing? Patricia whispered, voicing everyone's concern. Creating a diversion. Andrew's assessment came with grudging respect, drawing Crawford's attention while my team repositions. The confrontation outside grew more heated. Jason produced something from his pocket, the thumb drive containing the damning evidence. Crawford's professional facade cracked momentarily, raw anger flashing across his features as he reached for the evidence. Inside the cabin, Abigail stirred in Megan's arms, those impossible blue eyes opening to fix on the confrontation visible through the window. Her birthmark began to glow beneath her clothing, pulsing with increasing intensity. The cabin temperature rose perceptibly, despite the winter night frost patterns on the windows receding, as if fleeing the infant's influence. She's responding to the threat, Dr. Bennett observed with clinical fascination. The phenomenon is accelerating. The glow from Abigail's birthmark intensified, spreading outward like ripples in a pond. It passed through the cabin walls, illuminating the clearing outside with a soft golden light that caused Crawford to shield his eyes in surprise. Jason used the momentary distraction to create distance between them, backing toward the cabin. "What the hell?" Crawford's exclamation carried through the thin cabin walls. He signaled to his hidden team, who began emerging from concealment weapons trained on the cabin and the pulsing light emanating from within. Inside, the ancient Bible on the side table suddenly flipped pages, as if caught in a strong breeze, settling on a passage where another handwritten notation stood out in faded ink. "When darkness surrounds the chosen one, the light within shall become a shield against all who seek to claim her power." The golden light coalesced around the cabin, forming a visible barrier between Crawford's team and the structure itself. One operative approached cautiously, reaching toward the shimmering field, only to be thrown backward several feet upon contact, landing hard in the deep snow. Crawford's composed demeanor disintegrated entirely, scientific curiosity giving way to naked ambition. "This is exactly why we need the child." His shout carried clearly through the night air. "Look at what she can do. The applications are limitless." He signaled to his remaining team members, who began unpacking specialized equipment, capturing instruments, and containment devices designed for anomalous phenomena. Their methodical approach suggested they had encountered unusual manifestations before, though perhaps nothing of this magnitude. Inside the cabin, Andrew finished a hushed phone call with his security team. "They're in position, all approaches covered. If Crawford's people try to breach that, whatever it is, they'll be intercepted." But what is it? Patricia couldn't tear her eyes from the golden barrier, now fully encircling the cabin. "How is she doing this?" Catherine shook her head in wonder. "I don't think she's creating it. I think she's revealing what was always here." "Remember the deed? This land was sacred to the Abnaki people, a place of healing and visions. Perhaps what we're seeing is the property's true nature activated by Abigail's presence." Outside, Jason had reached the edge of the golden barrier, hesitating before it. Unlike Crawford's operative, he reached toward it with reverence rather than clinical curiosity. The light parted before his touch, creating an opening just large enough for him to slip through. Crawford surged forward, attempting to follow, but the barrier sealed instantly behind Jason, throwing the researcher backward with significant force. He landed awkwardly, clutching his arm where it had contacted the energy field. "Let me in." Crawford's scientific detachment had abandoned him completely, revealing the obsession beneath. "You don't understand what you have, what she could become under proper guidance." Jason reached the cabin door, which Andrew opened cautiously, weapons still trained on the young man despite his apparent change of allegiance. "I gave Crawford the thumb drive." Jason's words tumbled out breathlessly. "With all the evidence. Told him I'd release everything to media outlets, medical boards, and military oversight committees if he doesn't withdraw immediately. An experienced blackmailer wouldn't leave without a backup plan." Andrew's suspicion remained evident. "He's not experienced," Jason corrected. "He's desperate. The Preston Institute is on the verge of losing funding." Crawford promised breakthrough results to his military backers. Abigail represents his last chance to deliver. Outside, Crawford had regained his composure, conferring intensely with his team, while occasionally glancing toward the cabin with naked longing. The tactical equipment was being repacked, a temporary retreat perhaps, but unlikely to be a permanent withdrawal. "Even if he leaves tonight, he'll be back." Catherine voiced what they all understood. "With more resources, better preparation. He knows what Abigail can do now. That knowledge makes her even more valuable to him." Andrew nodded grimly. "Which is why we accelerate our plan. Transform this place immediately. Create the narrative before Crawford can control it." Dr. Bennett joined them at the window, medical practicality tempering the wonder of the moment. "How do you propose to do that with Crawford's team literally at the doorstep?" As if in answer, the sound of approaching vehicles reached them through the night. Not the stealthy approach of more Preston operatives, but the distinctive rumble of heavy trucks navigating the snow-covered access road. Headlights pierced the darkness as a convoy of construction vehicles crested the hill, led by a familiar pickup truck. "Right on time." Andrew allowed himself a small smile. "The first phase of our transformation begins tonight." Henry Weber emerged from the lead truck, accompanied by at least a dozen men in work clothes and winter gear. They regarded the golden barrier with momentary surprise before setting to work unloading equipment with practiced efficiency generators, temporary lighting construction materials. How did you arrange this so quickly? Catherine couldn't hide her amazement at Andrew's foresight. I made calls while you were packing at the house, he admitted. Henry knows everyone in the county with construction skills, and they're all loyal to him. When he explained what we needed without specifics about Abigail, of course, they came without hesitation. Crawford watched this development with visible frustration, his carefully planned extraction now complicated by numerous witnesses and a construction crew seemingly unperturbed by the supernatural barrier surrounding their worksite. His team leader approached, gesturing toward their vehicles in clear recommendation of strategic withdrawal. After a moment of indecision, Crawford nodded curtly. The Preston team began a coordinated retreat, maintaining professional discipline despite the unexpected setback. Crawford himself lingered, staring at the cabin with an expression of thwarted possession before finally joining his departing operatives. He'll be back. Jason's certainty needed no emphasis. With government backing, legal leverage, maybe even court orders. Crawford doesn't abandon targets, especially not one like Abigail. Then we'll be ready. Andrew's resolution encompassed them all. We have witnesses now, documentation, a public presence that makes covert extraction infinitely more complicated. The construction crew approached the golden barrier with curious caution. Henry stepped forward, removing his hat respectfully before reaching toward the shimmering field. Like Jason before him, the barrier parted for him, recognizing perhaps his years of service to Catherine during her isolation. The rest followed, each accepted by the mysterious energy as if judged and found worthy of entry. Within minutes, the clearing around the cabin transformed into an impromptu construction site, generators humming to life, work lights dispelling the darkness, men moving with purpose to execute Andrew's vision. And what happens when the barrier fades? Dr. Bennett voiced the practical concern. When Abigail sleeps or her energy wanes. Catherine looked down at the infant now sleeping peacefully in Megan's arms, the glow from her birthmark slowly dimming, though the barrier outside remained intact. I don't think it will fade. Not completely. I think she's awakened something in this land that has always been here waiting. Her presence was the catalyst, but the power belongs to the place itself. That's why your healing center concept will work. Megan understood immediately. It's not about exposing Abigail. It's about revealing the land's true nature, which has been healing people for centuries before we ever arrived. Exactly, Andrew nodded. We create the sanctuary around the existing power. Abigail becomes just one element of something much larger, protected by her very anonymity within a greater purpose. As dawn approached, the transformation had begun in earnest. The clearing expanded as selected trees were carefully removed to accommodate future structures. The foundation for the first additional building was marked out adjacent to the original cabin. Henry's crew worked with the focused energy of men on a mission greater than a mere construction project. Within the cabin, their impromptu family settled into new routines, Patricia organizing supplies, Dr. Bennett monitoring Megan and Abigail's health, Andrew coordinating security with his former military colleagues. Jason remained somewhat apart, his status still uncertain, though his actions against Crawford had earned him provisional acceptance. Catherine found herself drawn to the ancient Bible, still open to the passage about the chosen one's protective light. Her fingers traced the faded handwriting, generations old, yet speaking directly to their present circumstances. How many other gifted children had this land sheltered through the centuries? How many healers had drawn strength from this sacred ground? The morning sun crested the eastern hills, bathing the transformed clearing in golden light that mingled with the fading energy barrier. As natural daylight replaced supernatural protection, Catherine felt no diminishment of safety, merely a transition from one form of security to another. 1 year later, snow fell gently around the expanded cabin complex nestled in the clearing. What had once been Catherine's solitary refuge was now the heart of a small community. The Hope Center for Healing, as the modest sign at the entrance proclaimed, had gained regional recognition for remarkable recovery rates and holistic treatment approaches. The original cabin remained the centerpiece, Catherine's private quarters and Abigail's nursery occupying the historic structure. Surrounding it stood 4 additional buildings constructed in complementary style, a reception center where Dr. Bennett now practiced full-time, a residential facility for patients undergoing treatment, a research center focusing on natural healing methods, and staff accommodations. Sarah sat by the window in what had once been Catherine's living room, now a comfortable gathering space for the center's extended family. In her hands, she held a leather-bound journal, its pages filled with her neat handwriting. She had begun recording their story the day after Crawford's retreat, determined that Abigail would one day understand the extraordinary circumstances of her birth and the changes she had brought to all their lives. "She's finally asleep," Catherine announced, entering the room and settling into her familiar rocking chair. At 1 year old, Abigail had developed into a remarkably alert and good-natured child whose extraordinary qualities manifested in increasingly subtle ways, less as dramatic phenomena and more as a pervasive healing influence that extended to everyone who visited the center. Just in time, Megan smiled, closing her journal. Everyone should be arriving soon. They had chosen Abigail's first birthday to formally dedicate the completed center, though it had been quietly operating for months. What had begun as Andrew's impulsive sketch had evolved into a carefully planned sanctuary, a place where those in need could come for healing of body, mind, and spirit. The journey hadn't been without challenges. Crawford had indeed returned, attempting legal maneuvers to gain access to Abigail through child welfare inquiries and medical licensing investigations. But Andrew's connections, Jason's evidence, and most importantly, the center's growing reputation for legitimate healing outcomes had created a protective framework that even Crawford's influence couldn't penetrate. Jason had surprised them all with his transformation. Having completed his medical degree, he now divided his time between the center and a pediatric residency at the regional hospital, using his medical expertise to document the healing phenomena scientifically while developing a tentative co-parenting relationship with Megan. Andrew and Patricia had relocated permanently to a small house on the property, Andrew serving as the center's security coordinator, while Patricia managed administrative operations. Their marriage had strengthened through the shared purpose, the rigid pastor and his deferential wife, evolving into equal partners in an unexpected mission. Catherine herself had undergone the most visible transformation, her rejuvenation continuing subtly but unmistakably. At 58, she appeared at least a decade younger, being the healing energy of the land, and Abigail's continued presence reversing years of grief, accelerated aging. More significantly, recent medical tests confirmed the altered reality first glimpsed in the rewritten medical records. Her reproductive system partially restored a biological impossibility that nonetheless aligned perfectly with the center's growing catalog of medical anomalies. "I still can't believe how much has changed in a year." Megan looked around at the transformed space. The empty cabin where she'd sought desperate shelter during a snowstorm was now the heart of a healing community that served hundreds. "Some things haven't changed," Catherine observed with a smile. "Abigail still has your eyes, and her father's determined chin, unfortunately." Megan laughed. "And your spirit," she added softly. "Your resilience." The sound of vehicles approaching interrupted their moment of reflection. Through the window, they could see Andrew's SUV leading a small procession of cars up the freshly plowed driveway. The first anniversary celebration was about to begin. As Megan rose to greet their guests, Abigail's cry sounded from the nursery. "Perfect timing as usual," she said with a rueful smile. "Can you get the door? I'll get her ready." In the nursery, once Catherine's spare bedroom, Abigail stood in her crib, her dark curls tousled from sleep. At 1 year old, she remained extraordinary in subtle ways. Her development had progressed rapidly, but not impossibly so. Her awareness, her connection to those around her, the occasional manifestations of her gift, all could be explained away by those who needed rational explanations. But for those who knew her, who loved her, who had witnessed the impossible become reality through her presence, there was no denying the miracle she embodied. The healing center's success stemmed from many factors: the land's inherent properties, the skilled practitioners who had joined their cause, the supportive community they had built, but at its heart was a child whose very existence defied explanation. "Happy birthday, little miracle," Megan whispered, lifting her daughter into her arms. Abigail reached up to touch her mother's face, a gesture of connection that never failed to bring tears to Megan's eyes. In that touch, she felt all the love, purpose, and wonder that had entered her life on that stormy night a year ago. Downstairs, voices filled the main room. Andrew and Patricia greeting guests, Catherine explaining the center's mission, Dr. Bennett discussing their research. The community they had built, deliberately small but growing steadily, was gathering to celebrate not just Abigail's birth, but the renewal she had brought to all their lives. Megan carried Abigail downstairs to join the celebration. As they entered the room, conversations paused, all eyes turning to the child who had brought them together. Abigail regarded them solemnly for a moment before breaking into a brilliant smile that illuminated the room far more effectively than the warm lamps and crackling fire. Andrew approached, taking his granddaughter's tiny hand in his weathered one. "There she is," he said proudly. "Our hope." The simple phrase encompassed everything: the child herself, the healing she had brought, the future they were building together. As if understanding the significance of the moment, Abigail's birthmark glowed softly beneath her birthday dress, visible only to those who knew to look for it. Catherine moved to stand beside Megan, completing the circle. "From an ending to a beginning," she murmured. "From loss to renewal, from winter's fury to spring's promise." Megan finished the thought, the words from the ancient prophecy now deeply personal to them all. When the lost mother finds the mother lost, the circle is complete. Outside, snow continued to fall, blanketing the world in pristine white, while inside the Hope Center, warmth and light prevailed, just as they had on the night when a desperate young woman had found shelter. A solitary soul had found connection, and a miraculous child had found her way into a world forever changed by her presence.